I put my shoulder into that door and hit it so hard the window glass rattled in the frame. It didn't open. My key was already bent in my hand. I'd forced it so hard the metal folded. So I hit the door again. And again, screaming my daughter's name on the porch of the house I paid for with my dead husband's life insurance. Loud enough that the birds came off the trees. Nobody came. Then the front curtain moved 2 inches. My son-in-law Kevin looked out at me through glass. I installed myself, with a beer in his hand. And he smiled, like I was a neighbor. Then he let the curtain drop. He didn't know about the filing cabinet in Savannah. He didn't know what was in the second drawer. 11 months later, that one piece of paper took everything he had. Stay to the end. The last 5 minutes are the part nobody sees coming. And do me a favor. Put the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far this has traveled. My name is Evelyn Carter. 67 years old. I ran Whitfield Elementary in Savannah, Georgia for 22 years. And in all that time I never once raised my voice at a closed door. I need you to understand that before I go on. Because if I start with the screaming, you'll think I'm the kind of woman who screams. I'm not. I'm the kind of woman who sends thank you cards, who keeps spare keys in a drawer with little labels on them in her own handwriting, who apologizes when somebody else bumps into her in the grocery store. That's how they got this far. It started on a Tuesday evening in May. I was standing in my kitchen with a dish towel over my shoulder and the calendar open on the counter, one of those big paper ones from the pharmacy, with the squares you can write in. I'd already filled it out. June 14 through August 9. Blue Ridge. In blue pen. Because blue was Richard's color. And because after 51 years of marking calendars, I don't know how to stop. Amelia's name came up on the phone and my whole chest lifted. That's not a figure of speech. 67 years old and my daughter's name still does that. Hi, sweetheart. Hey, Mom Flat. Careful. You got a minute. I've got all of them. What's going on? Nothing's going on. She stopped. And I heard a door close on her end. I've thought about that door 400 times since. She went somewhere private to say what she was about to say. She prepared. So. Kevin and I have been talking. About the summer. Oh, good, I was going to call you. I was thinking I'd come up the 13th. Get in Saturday. Have the beds made before you all. Mom. And you won't believe what I found in the storage unit. Your father's croquet set. The whole thing. Mallets and all. Levi's turning 6, that's about the right. Mom. I stopped. The dish towel down on the counter. Kevin and I talked, she said. And we think it's better if you don't come this summer. I've taken bad news before. I've sat in a hospital corridor at 4 in the morning. I've stood in front of a first-grade classroom and told them their teacher wasn't coming back. Bad news usually has a shape. There's a second or two of warning. A change in the air. This came out of nothing. I'm sorry, I said. Say that again. Don't do that. Do what? I'm asking you to repeat it. I don't think I... You heard me. And then she sighed. She sighed like I was the difficult one. The house is crowded, Mom. Kevin's parents are coming for 3 weeks. Kids each want to bring a friend. Sophie's got a girl from camp. Levi's got the little boy down the street. It's just a lot of people. It's easier this way. You understand, right? You understand, right? That's not a question. That's a door being shut with a hand on your shoulder so you can't see it closing. Amelia, I said. Slow. Careful. There are 4 bedrooms. I know how many bedrooms there are. 4 bedrooms and the sunroom. And the sunroom's got the daybed. I'll take the daybed. I don't need a room. I'd sleep in the car. I just want to see the see this. This is what I mean. Her voice went sharp and I actually flinched. Standing alone in my own kitchen. You do this thing where you make it impossible to say no to you. You make yourself so small that anybody who says no is a monster. Angelus, and I'm not doing it. Angelus, I'm just telling you it's not a good summer. Angelus, I stood there holding the phone. Angelus, okay, I said. Angelus, okay. Angelus, okay. Angelus, and now you're doing the voice. Angelus, I'm not doing a voice, Amelia. Angelus, I'm agreeing with you. You're doing the voice you did when I told you I was moving to Atlanta. Angelus, I said okay. Angelus, sweetheart. What else would you like me to say? Angelus, silence. Long enough that I checked the screen to see if she'd hung up. Angelus, and then I heard him. Angelus, not words. Just the shape of a man's voice somewhere behind her. Angelus, 2 syllables. Angelus, maybe 3. Angelus, and my daughter said, Angelus, away from the phone. Angelus, muffled with her hand over it. Angelus, I'm doing it. Angelus, I'm doing it. Angelus, like a chore. Angelus, like taking the trash to the curb. Angelus, I'm doing it. Angelus, Amelia. Angelus, is Kevin there? Angelus, no. Because I thought I heard. Angelus, he's in the other room. Angelus, Mom, I've got to go. Angelus, the kids need dinner. Angelus, we'll talk soon. Angelus, love you. Angelus, click. Angelus, 62 seconds. I know because the phone tells you. 62 seconds to be uninvited from the house I built with my own 2 hands. Angelus, I stood there a while. Then I picked up the blue pen and I crossed out the squares on that calendar. Angelus, all 8 weeks. Angelus, 1 line through each one. Angelus, left to right. Angelus, the way you cross out a name on a list. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and said out loud, Angelus, to nobody. Angelus, well, Richard. Angelus, that's new. Angelus, let me tell you about that house. Angelus, and I'll be quick. Angelus, because I'm not asking for your sympathy. Angelus, I'm asking you to hold on to the math. Richard died in March of 2016. Angelus, heart. Angelus, he was 61. He walked out to get the paper and he didn't come back in. Angelus, and I found him on the driveway. Angelus, and that's the last sentence I'm going to write about it. Angelus, because I've spent 10 years learning how not to live on that driveway. Angelus, for a year and a half I was a ghost in an empty house. Angelus, Amelia called Sundays. Angelus, Kevin never called once. Angelus, and one Sunday she said, Angelus, Mom, you need a project. Angelus, she was right. So I got in the car and I drove north until the land started going up instead of out. Angelus, and I found a 110-year-old farmhouse near Blue Ridge Lake with a collapsed porch. Angelus, a raccoon living in the pantry. Angelus, and a price that made my hands shake. Angelus, I paid for it with Richard's life insurance. Angelus, every dollar. Angelus, plus my retirement account. Angelus, plus the savings. Plus the little inheritance from his mother we never touched. Angelus, because we always said we'd use that for something that mattered. Angelus, then I spent 3 years fixing it. Angelus, and I need you to hear the word I. Angelus, I sanded those floors myself. 61 years old on my knees with a rented drum sander that kicked so hard it left a bruise on my hip the color of a plum. Angelus, I planted the garden every bulb. Angelus, every rose. Angelus, the hydrangeas along the south fence that took 2 full years to decide they wanted to live. Dripped 11 layers of wallpaper off the front room. Angelus, 11. Angelus, I counted them like tree rings. I fell off a stepladder in November of 2018 and cracked a rib and didn't tell my daughter for 6 weeks. Angelus, because I couldn't stand to hear her say, see. Angelus, Mom, this is too much for you. Angelus, I named it Richard's Haven. Angelus, I had a sign made in elegay out of white oak. Angelus, and I hung it over the door myself. Angelus, on a stepladder Amelia held while she laughed at me for measuring 4 times. Angelus, and Kevin never lifted a finger. Angelus, not one. Angelus, not 1 hour. Angelus, not $1. Angelus, not 1 nail. He came up for the reveal weekend in the spring of 2019. Walked through the whole thing with his hands in his pockets. Angelus didn't ask a single question about any of it. And at the end he stood in my kitchen, the kitchen I built, and said, Angelus, you know what, be smart. Angelus, Ev, rent it out when you're not up here. Angelus, Airbnb. Angelus, place like this in peak season. Angelus, you're leaving money on the table. Angelus, Ev. He's called me Ev since the day he married my daughter. Angelus, I've asked him twice. Angelus, politely, years apart, to please call me Evelyn. Angelus, he thinks it's affectionate. Angelus, it's not. It's a way of making something smaller. Angelus, I said, it's not for renting, Kevin. Angelus, it's for family. And he laughed and said, sure. Right up until the roof goes. I should have listened harder to that sentence. There was a whole man inside it. Thanksgiving 2023. I want to take you there, because I didn't understand it at the time, and now I understand nothing else. 12 of us around the table. Kevin's parents, Bill and Susan, up from Macon. Doris and her husband. Kids at the little table in the front room. Everything the way it was supposed to be. That's the part that gets me. It was good. I was happy that night. I'd just brought the pies out when Kevin leaned back in his chair, Richard's chair. But I'd made my peace with that and said, real casual. Like he was asking about the weather. Hey, Ev. Question. The lake place. Is that in a trust? Or is it just in your name? The table kept going. Nobody stopped. That's how normal it sounded. I said, it's just in my name. Huh, he nodded slowly. Just yours. Not a trust. Not a trust. Huh, he said again. And then Bill said something about the Falcons, and the whole table turned, and that was the end of it. 10 seconds. That's all it was. 10 seconds out of a 4-hour dinner. But here's what I didn't notice at the time, and what I've replayed until the tape is worn through. He didn't ask what it was worth. Every man in America asks what it's worth. It's the first question. What it appraise at? Ev, that's small talk. That's normal. He didn't ask. Because he already knew. I didn't know it then. But Kevin had made a phone call 2 weeks before that dinner. Not to me. To a man in Elijah with a clipboard and a measuring wheel. Then there were the photographs. February. Amelia sent me a picture on my phone with 3 exclamation points. Refreshed the front room. What do you think? And I looked at it on that little screen with my reading glasses down my nose. And I said what a mother says. I said it looked lovely. Because it did. Clean lines. Nice paint. She was proud of it, and I was proud of her for being proud. Called her that evening. It looks beautiful, honey. Really. Did you do the painting yourselves? Kevin's cousin did it. He owed us a favor. She was happy. Bright. It's the last time I remember her being bright with me. It feels so much lighter in there, Mom. It was so heavy before. Heavy. Well, it's a 100-year-old house, I said. It's supposed to be a little heavy. She laughed. And I laughed. And I want you to understand I let it go. I said goodbye. I loved her. I hung up. It was 3 days later. Lying in bed at 2 in the morning. When I sat straight up. The photographs. There were 9 framed pictures on that front room wall. I hung them. I know exactly where each one went. Because I patched and repainted around them. My wedding photo, Richard, with that ridiculous mustache. 1,000. 974. Richard holding Amelia at 3 days old. Sitting in a chair in the hospital. Looking at her like she'd invented light. My mother at the beach at Tybee in 1,000. 961. In a bathing suit. Laughing at whoever was behind the camera. Amelia's kindergarten picture with the missing tooth. Richard's father in uniform. 9 of them. I got out of bed and I pulled the picture up on my phone and I looked at that wall. Clean. Bare. One of those wooden signs that says lake life in cursive letters. I called her the next morning. I made myself wait until 9. And I made myself have coffee first. And I made my voice sound like nothing. Honey, quick question. The photographs from the front room. Where'd those end up? Pause. The what? The 9 framed pictures. On the long wall. Oh, the old ones. Mom, I don't know. They're around somewhere. Around somewhere. They're probably in the basement. Kevin's cousin boxed everything up when he painted. I didn't, Mom. Why is one of them important? Is one of them important? I stood in my kitchen in Savannah with the phone against my ear, and I looked at my refrigerator, where there is a photograph of my grandson's chalk dinosaur, and I did the thing I have done my entire life, which is the thing that got me here. I said no. No, honey. I was just curious. I want to reach back through time and grab that woman by the shoulders. The basement floods, Evelyn. You know the basement floods. Put in a sump pump in 2018 because the basement floods. I said no, honey. I was just curious. That's on me. I want that on the record. Some of this is on me. 9 days. That's how long I went without calling my daughter after the 62-second phone call. Longest stretch since she left for college in 1998. 9 days. Up the phone and put it down. Because what was I going to say? Please. Spent my whole life not being a woman who says please. On the 10th day Doris came over. Doris taught 4th grade under me for 19 years, and she is the only living person who is not afraid of me. She sat at my table, looked at the crossed-out calendar and said, Evelyn, what is that? That's the summer. Why is the summer crossed out? 'Cause I'm not going. Since when? Since Amelia and Kevin decided the house is too crowded. Doris set her coffee down. Very slowly. The way you set something down when you're about to need both hands. The house you own, she said. That's the one. The house with your husband's name on the door. Doris. No, I'm asking. 'Cause I want to be certain I understand the situation. And the situation as you've described it is that the owner of a house has been informed by the guests that the house is full. I laughed. First time in 10 days. And it came out sideways. Half a sob. Don't, I said. Call her. And say what? Say it's my house. And I'm coming. Doris, I put my hands flat on the table. If I make her choose between me and Kevin, I know what she chooses. I've known since 2011. So I don't ask her to choose. That's the whole arrangement. That's the deal. Doris looked at me for a long moment. Who made that deal, she said. I didn't answer. I'll tell you who made it. You did. By yourself. In your own head. And you never told the other party the terms. So as far as your daughter knows, Mama's just fine with anything. She stood up and put her cup in my sink, and she said one more thing on her way out. And it took me 11 months to understand it. Evelyn, honey. You keep saying you're being kind. But there's a kind of kindness that's really just a lock you put on your own mouth. I called Amelia that night. Mom, hi, sorry. It's crazy here. Hang on, kids in the background. A television. Levi not on the couch. Sorry. Hey. What's up? I want to talk about the summer. Oh, all the air went out of her voice. Like a tire going down. Mom, I thought we did that. You did that. I listened. Those aren't the same thing. Silence. I'm going to ask you something. And I want you to think before you answer. Because I'm not asking twice. I had it written on an index card. That's how frightened I was. 67 years old. 22 years running a school. And I wrote it on a card so my voice wouldn't wander. Whose house is it? What? Whose house? Is it? Mom, come on. 4 words. Sweetheart. Simple question. It's yours. Obviously. I'm not saying. Then explain to me how the owner of a house is too many people to fit in it. I heard her breathe in. That's not fair. It's completely fair. It's just not comfortable. Those aren't the same thing either. Okay, and her voice changed. It went fast and hot. And I could hear she'd been holding it maybe for years. You want to do this, fine. Let's do this. It's exhausting, Mom. Having you there. It's exhausting. Angelus, I sat down on the edge of my bed. Angelus, go on, I said. Angelus, you reorganize my kitchen. Angelus, every single time. Angelus, I put the mugs on the left. Angelus, I come down in the morning. Angelus, the mugs are on the right, and you say, oh, Angelus, they just made more sense there, and I have to stand there and be grateful. Angelus, it's my kitchen, Amelia. Angelus, that she was crying now. Angelus, that right there. Angelus, it's my kitchen. Angelus, that's the entire problem. Angelus, you say Richard's Haven. Angelus, it's for family. Angelus, everybody come. Angelus, and then we come and it's a museum. Angelus, don't put your feet there. Don't use the good towels. Levi drew on the porch step with sidewalk chalk. Angelus, Mom and you scrubbed it off before he was even finished. Angelus, and you did it smiling. Angelus, and he asked me in the car if Grandma was mad at him. Angelus, I opened my mouth. Angelus, nothing came out of it. Kevin stopped. Angelus, say it. Angelus, Kevin says. Angelus, Amelia. Angelus, finish it. Kevin says you don't want a family house. Angelus, you want an audience. Angelus, there it was. Angelus, the voice from the other room. Angelus, arriving at last. Angelus, with his name on it. Angelus, I sat in the dark on the edge of my bed. And I'd like to tell you I said something that put her on the floor. Angelus, I had 22 years of parent conferences. Angelus, I know how to take a room apart. Angelus, here's what I actually said. Angelus, was the chalk really such a bad thing? Angelus, Mom. Angelus, no. Angelus, I'm asking, honey. Angelus, I'm honestly asking. Angelus, because I don't, and my voice went. Angelus, I hate that. Angelus, I hate when my voice goes. Angelus, I don't remember that. Angelus, I remember he drew a dinosaur with a hat on it. Angelus, I remember telling him it was the best dinosaur I ever saw. Angelus, and it rained that night. Angelus, and I remember standing at the window thinking, oh, Angelus, that's a shame. Angelus, and I went out with my phone before the rain and I took a picture of it. Angelus, nothing on the line. Angelus, it's on my refrigerator, Amelia. Angelus, right now. I'm looking at it while we're talking. Angelus, nothing. So I'm asking you a real question and I want a real answer. Angelus, did I scrub it off? Angelus, nothing. Angelus, or did somebody tell you I scrubbed it off? The silence went on so long I could hear the television downstairs in her house. Angelus, 4 hours away. Angelus, I have to go, she said. Angelus, 2 weeks later I drove up. Angelus, I didn't tell her I was coming. Angelus, I'm not proud of that. I told myself all kinds of pretty things on the way that I was checking the gutters. Angelus, that the well pump needed looking at before the season. Angelus, that's a lie. Angelus, I drove 4 hours to find out if I was still real. Stopped at the Shell in Blairsville like I always do. Got a coffee and a pack of those orange peanut butter crackers. The girl behind the counter said, Angelus, headed up to the lake. Angelus, I said, headed home. Angelus, I meant it. Angelus, I want you to hold on to that. Angelus, 40 minutes later. Angelus, the key didn't turn. Angelus, I need to describe that exact feeling. Angelus, because I've talked to a lot of people since, and about half of them know it and half don't. Angelus, and I'm sorry for the half that do. Key that doesn't fit doesn't feel like an insult. Angelus, not at first. Angelus, it feels like you're wrong. Your first thought isn't somebody changed the lock. Your first thought is I've got the wrong key. So you check. You look at the little tag you wrote in your own handwriting, beer on heaven front, and you try it again. Angelus, gentler, because maybe you were forcing it. Angelus, then the back door, then the mudroom door. Angelus, the one that sticks. Angelus, the one you have to lift with your hip. I went around that entire house trying 7 doors with a key I had cut in 2017. Angelus, and standing at that mudroom door. Angelus, with my hip against it the way I've done 100 times. Angelus, I finally understood. Angelus, that's when I lost it. I went back around front and I put my shoulder into that door and the window glass rattled in the frame and I hit it again and I screamed my daughter's name the way you scream it when she's 6 and running into a road. Angelus, Amelia. Angelus, Amelia Carter Moore. Angelus, you open this door. Angelus, 2 cars in the drive. Angelus, hers and his. Angelus, lights on in the kitchen. Angelus, the television going. Angelus, I know you're in there. Curtain in the front room, the room I stripped 11 layers of wallpaper off of. Angelus, on my knees. Angelus, at 61 years old, moved 2 inches. Angelus, Kevin. We looked at each other through that glass for 3 full seconds. He had a beer in his hand. And he smiled at me. Not a nervous smile. Not a caught smile. A pleasant one. Kind you give a neighbor across a fence. Then he let the curtain drop. I sat down on my own porch step. 67 years old. On steps I rebuilt myself. With a bent key in my hand and my heart going so hard I thought about who I'd call if it didn't stop. And while I sat there, I did something that turned out to matter more than anything else I did that whole year. I took out my phone and I scrolled back. All the way back to April. Because something had been scratching at me since Doris said the word terms. And there it was. April 3rd. From Amelia. I'd read it once and forgotten it inside a minute. Hey, Kevin's getting the locks redone. Security thing. There was a break-in at the Hendersons. I'll get you a key. I'll get you a key. With 2 exclamation points and an X and an X. I sat on my porch and I counted the days on my fingers like a child. April 3rd to June 14th. 72 days. 72 days. And in the middle of them a phone call telling me not to come. And I thought, no, that's not a thing that gets forgotten. You don't forget for 72 days. You forget for a week. Then you feel bad and you mail it. 72 days isn't forgetting. 72 days is a decision. Made once and held. I screenshotted that message. I don't know why. Sitting there on those steps with my hands shaking. I screenshotted it. 11 months later. Rachel Williams put that screenshot on a projector. And I watched a man's face come apart. 20 minutes. That's how long it took my daughter to come out. I counted. I sat on my own porch in front of my own lit window and I counted. And I want you to imagine what a person does with those 20 minutes. While the people inside decide whether you exist. The door opened. Just wide enough for her body. Mom, a whisper. What are you doing? I stood up. My knee didn't want to. I made it. My key doesn't work. I know. You know? Kevin had the locks done in April. There was a break-in at the Hendersons. 2 doors down and he's... April. He said it was a security thing, Mom. It's not. Amelia. It's June. She stopped. Changed the locks on the 3rd of April. I said, and it is the 14th of June. And you texted me that you'd get me a key. And neither one of you has mailed me a key to my own house in 72 days. It wasn't like that. Then tell me what it was like. Explain it. I'm listening. I've got all night. I've apparently got nowhere to be. Couldn't. Stood in the crack of that door and she couldn't do it. And I watched her face do the thing it's done since she was 4 years old, that little collapse around the eyes. Right before she picks the easier thing. Can I come in? I said. And she looked back over her shoulder. And something in me went very quiet. Not angry. Cold. The way you go when a child runs into a road and the car misses. And you don't yell. You just walk off somewhere and shake. Don't, I said. Don't look at him. Look at me. I'm right here. I've been right here your entire life. Look at me and tell me if I can come into my house. And from inside. Calm, warm. Reasonable. Ev, come on in. It's fine. There's chili on the stove. And my daughter's shoulders came down about 2 inches. Relief. She was relieved. 'Cause somebody else had made the decision for her. That's when I knew. No thank you, I said. Mom, I'm going to drive to the Comfort Inn in Blairsville and have a shower. Tomorrow I'll go home. Don't call tonight. I won't answer. And then you'll feel bad. And I don't want you to feel bad tonight. Mom, that's not fair. Amelia, I put my hand on her cheek. And she let me. She has never once refused my hand on her face. Not one time in 38 years. And that is the most terrible thing about her. I love you more than anything that has ever been on this earth, Angelus, including your father, Angelus, and don't you tell him I said that. She was crying. Somebody in that house is lying to you about me, I said. Angelus, and you know it. Angelus, you've known a while. And you'd rather live inside the lie than have the fight. Angelus, I understand it. I did the exact same thing with your grandmother for 31 years, Angelus, and I regretted every day of it, Angelus, and she died before I fixed it. Then I took my hand back and I walked to my car. Angelus, I got as far as the gate before my headlights hit it. Angelus, the sign. Angelus, Richard's Haven. Angelus, White Oak. Angelus, from Ella J. Angelus, hung by me in 2019 on a stepladder she held while she laughed at me. Angelus, gone. Angelus, in its place. Angelus, on a smaller board. Angelus, in a font like a wedding invitation. Angelus, the Moore Family Lake House Est. Angelus, 2019. Angelus, Est. Angelus, 2019. The year I finished it. I sat there with the engine running and my headlights on that thing, and I did not cry. Angelus, I'd already cried. Angelus, on the porch. Angelus, on the porch I was a mother. Angelus, then I got out of the car. Angelus, I don't entirely know why. I walked around the side of the house in the dark with my phone flashlight. Angelus, past the hydrangeas that took 2 years to decide to live. Angelus, to the trash bins by the shed. And I lifted the lid on the second one. Angelus, it was in there. Angelus, face down. Angelus, under a bag of grass clippings. Angelus, my sign. Angelus, snapped clean in half through the middle of Richard's name. Angelus, not sawed. Angelus, not cut. Could see the grain where it tore. Somebody put that over a knee and broke it. I stood in the dark behind my own house holding 2 pieces of white oak, Angelus, and I want to tell you what went through me, Angelus, and it wasn't grief. Angelus, it was the strangest thing. Angelus, it was relief. Because a man who quietly takes down a sign is a man who wants a fresher look. A man who breaks it over his knee is a man who is angry at it, Angelus, and you don't get angry at a piece of wood. Angelus, you get angry at what it proves. Both halves, and I put them in my trunk, Angelus, and I took a photograph of that trash bin first, Angelus, with the date on my phone, Angelus, because 22 years of documenting incidents will do that to a person, Angelus. Then I got in my car, Angelus, and the principal, not the mother, Angelus. The principal looked at that new sign in the headlights one more time, Angelus, and she didn't think how could they, Angelus, she thought, Est. Angelus, 2019 is a factual claim, Angelus, and facts can be checked. Room 118 at the Comfort Inn in Blairsville. Angelus, 2 double beds for a woman traveling alone. I sat on the end of one with my shoes still on, and I called Doris at 11 at night. Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, he changed the locks. Angelus, silence. Angelus, Doris, he changed the locks, Angelus, and he smiled at me through the window, Angelus, and my daughter looked at him before she'd answer me. Angelus, where are you right now? Angelus, Comfort Inn. Angelus, Blairsville. Angelus, Blairsville. I heard her sit up. Angelus, I heard a lamp click. Angelus, all right, she said. Angelus, I'm going to say a thing, Angelus, and you're going to hate me, Angelus, and I want you to hear the whole thing before you hang up. Angelus, say it. Evelyn, why do they need you out? Angelus, what? Angelus, you keep telling me they don't want you there. Angelus, fine. Angelus, people are ugly. But honey, you're not a hard woman to have around. Angelus, you make pancakes. You'd sleep in the sunroom. You'd take the kids to the lake and give them the whole day to themselves. Angelus, her voice got very careful. You could be there, and they could still have their crowded, happy summer. Angelus, grandma on the daybed. Angelus, it costs them nothing. Doris, Angelus, so why do they need you out? And I sat on that bed in room 118 and I couldn't answer her. Angelus, I don't know, I said. Angelus, yes you do, Angelus, said Doris. Angelus, you just don't want to. Angelus, I drove home the next morning. Angelus, 4 hours and 10 minutes. Angelus, I didn't turn the radio on once. And then I did what I've done my entire adult life when the world stops making sense. Angelus, I made a list. Angelus, legal pad. Angelus, kitchen table. Angelus, and I wrote down every single thing. Angelus, in order with dates. Angelus, the way I'd document an incident at school. Angelus, not for revenge. Angelus, because when a thing doesn't add up, Angelus, you don't scream at it. Angelus, you itemize it. Angelus, May 6th the call. Angelus, 62 seconds. Kevin and I talk. April 3 locks change. Angelus, I'll get you a key. Angelus, 72 days. Angelus, no key. March, Kevin's using the study for work now. Angelus, hope that's okay. Angelus, I said sure. Angelus, I said sure. February, front room refresh. Angelus, 9 photographs gone. They're around somewhere. Deck 2019, you're leaving money on the table. Ev. Angelus, and then further down older things. Things I had never once put on the same piece of paper. Angelus, because I'd never had a reason to. Angelus, Nov 2023. Angelus, Thanksgiving is the lake place in a trust. Angelus, or is it just in your name? Angelus, never asked what it was worth. June 2024. Amelia. Angelus, have you thought about what happens to the house, you know? Angelus, eventually. Angelus, I said it's in the will. Angelus, honey, it's yours. Angelus, and she said right. Angelus, but like, eventually. Sept 2024, Kevin's business. Angelus, mentioned once by Amelia and never again. Angelus, it's a slow patch. Angelus, everybody has a slow patch. Angelus, I read that page top to bottom 4 times. Angelus, and there is a moment. There's always a moment. I was on the 4th pass and my eye went down to S. Angelus, 2019, and then jumped back up to, is it in a trust or just your name, and back down again. Angelus, and my hands went cold on that table. Because here's the thing about being uninvited from a house. Angelus, Doris was right. Angelus, I'm not hard to have around. Angelus, you can have your crowded. Angelus, chaotic, happy summer with grandma on the daybed in the sunroom. Angelus, she'll make pancakes. Angelus, she'll take the kids to the water. Angelus, she'll be delighted. There is no version of we want to enjoy the house that requires new locks and no key for 72 days. There is exactly one reason on God's earth to keep the owner out of a building. Because you do not want the owner to see what has been done to it. Picked up the phone, and I called the only person I had left who charges by the hour. Angelus, Rachel Williams' office. Angelus, Rachel. Angelus, Evelyn Carter. How's the... Rachel, I need you to pull the deed and the tax record on the Blue Ridge property. Angelus, today if you can. Angelus, paper stopped moving on her end. Angelus, okay, she said slower. Angelus, sure. Angelus, is something... Angelus, and Rachel. Angelus, I looked down at 10 years of my own good manners. Angelus, sitting there on a legal pad in my own handwriting. I need you to check whether anything's been filed against it. Angelus, the pause on that line. Angelus, I'll remember it as long as I live. Angelus, it's the sound of a lawyer sitting up straight. Angelus, filed against it. Angelus, Rachel said. Angelus, Evelyn, why would something be filed against it? Angelus, because somebody put a new sign on my house. Angelus, I said, with a date on it. Angelus, and I'd like to know what else has a date on it. Rachel came back at 9:40 the next morning. I know the time because I was standing at the sink with my hands in dishwater and I had to dry them on my nightgown. Angelus, and I remember thinking, Angelus, in the 2 seconds it took to pick up. Angelus, that she was calling this fast because there was nothing to find. Angelus, that's what I thought. Calling fast because it's clean. Angelus, Evelyn, she said. Angelus, are you sitting down? Angelus, no. Angelus, sit down. Angelus, Rachel, I'm 67. Angelus, not 90. Angelus, say it. There's a lien on the property. Angelus, I sat down. Angelus, say that again. There is a mechanic's lien filed against the Blue Ridge property. Filed the 22nd of May of this year by a contractor out of Ellijay. Angelus, Cantrell Builders. Angelus, amount is $58,000. Angelus, 400. Angelus, I looked at my kitchen wall. There's a clock on it that Richard bought at a yard sale in 1000. Angelus, 993, and it has always run 4 minutes fast and I have never fixed it. Angelus, I don't know anybody named Cantrell, I said. I didn't think you did. Rachel, I want to make sure you and I are talking about the same house. Angelus, the house on Cutter Ridge Road. Angelus, my house. Angelus, the one in my name only. Angelus, no trust, no partners. Angelus, no mortgage. Angelus, paid in full in November of 2017. Angelus, that's the one. Then how does a man I've never met put a lien on my house for $58,000? And Rachel said the sentence that changed my whole life. Angelus, because somebody hired him. I want to tell you I said something intelligent. Angelus, I said, oh. Angelus, Evelyn, listen to me carefully. A mechanic's lien means a contractor did work on a property and says he wasn't paid. Angelus, for that lien to exist. Angelus, three things have to be true. Angelus, somebody contracted him. Work was performed. Angelus, and he didn't get his money. Angelus, now. Angelus, you didn't hire him. Angelus, no. Angelus, so somebody else did. Angelus, on your house. Which means somebody represented to that man that they had the authority to hire him. Angelus, Kevin. Angelus, I didn't say that. Angelus, Rachel. I didn't say that, and you're not going to say it either. Angelus, not out loud. Angelus, not to anyone. Angelus, until I have paper. Angelus, I heard her pen click. That woman has clicked a pen at me for 20 years. Angelus, here's what else. Angelus, I pulled permits. Evelyn, there are 2 building permits on that property. One from October of 2024. Angelus, one from March of this year. Angelus, for what? Angelus, October is a bathroom addition. March is what's called a change of use application. Angelus, what's a change of use? Angelus, there was a pause. It's when you tell the county the building is going to be used for something other than what it was. Angelus, I stood back up. Angelus, I don't know why. Angelus, my body just did it. Angelus, other than what? It doesn't say yet. Angelus, I've got a call in. There's one more thing and I want you to be ready for it. Rachel, at this point, I would like you to just start at the worst thing and work backwards. Angelus, the permit applications are signed. Angelus, I heard my own voice from very far away. Angelus, signed by who? They're signed by the property owner. Angelus, Rachel said. Angelus, they're signed Evelyn R. Angelus, Carter. Angelus, the clock on my wall went on being 4 minutes fast. I have never in my life signed a permit, I said. Angelus, I know. I have never been in the Fannin County offices. I don't know where they are. I have never signed my name on a piece of paper about that house, except at the closing table in 2017, and you were sitting next to me. Angelus, I know, Evelyn. Angelus, then what am I looking at? Angelus, and Rachel Williams. Angelus, who has been my attorney since Richard's estate and who does not use big words at me. Angelus said, very quietly. Angelus, you're looking at forgery. I hung up and I stood in my kitchen for a while, and then I did something that I am still a little ashamed of. I went and got Richard's picture off my dresser. Angelus, the one from the hospital. Angelus, with the baby. Angelus, and I held it and I said, Angelus, out loud, did you know? Angelus, did you see this in him? Because Richard never liked Kevin. Angelus, not once. Angelus, in 2011 at that wedding. Angelus, Richard stood next to me in the back of that church, and he watched Kevin come down the aisle, and he said, Angelus, just that. Angelus, and I elbowed him and told him to behave. Angelus, and now here I was. Angelus, 10 years after they put him in the ground. Angelus, standing in a kitchen holding a photograph. Angelus, saying, Rachel called back at 4:20 that afternoon. Angelus, change of use, she said. Angelus, I got it. The application requests reclassification of the structure from single-family residential to short-term rental. Angelus, occupancy 12. Angelus, I sat down on the floor. I want to be honest with you about that. Angelus, I did not sit in a chair. I was standing at the counter, and I went down onto the kitchen floor with my back against the dishwasher. Angelus, 67 years old. Angelus, in a house in Savannah. Angelus, with a phone against my ear. Angelus, say the number again, I said. Angelus, occupancy 12. Angelus, 12 people. Angelus, 12 people. Angelus, Rachel, that's a family house. Not according to the county, it isn't. Angelus, not since March. Angelus, and then I started laughing. That's the part people don't understand when I tell it. I sat on my kitchen floor and I laughed until I couldn't breathe. Angelus, and Rachel was saying my name on the phone. Angelus, saying Evelyn. Angelus, Evelyn, are you all right? Angelus, and I couldn't stop. Angelus, because I finally heard it. Angelus, after 7 weeks. Angelus, I finally heard the sentence. You're leaving money on the table, Ev. He said it to my face in my own kitchen in 2019, and I said it's not for renting. Angelus, Kevin, it's for family. Angelus, and he laughed and said sure. Angelus, right up until the roof goes. Angelus, that wasn't a joke. That was a man telling me exactly what he was going to do. Angelus, 6 years early. Angelus, and me handing him a slice of pie. Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, I'm here. Angelus, get off the floor. How do you know I'm on the floor? Angelus. Because I've known you since 2016. Angelus. Rachel said. Angelus. Get off the floor. Angelus. And go to your computer. Angelus. And I want you to search for the house. Angelus. Search for it how? Just search the address, she said. Angelus. And Evelyn. Angelus. Honey, take a breath first. I want you to understand something about me and computers. I ran a school through 2 decades of technology. I am not one of these people who can't work a machine. Angelus. I have an iPad. Angelus. I know what a hashtag is. I sat down at Richard's old desk and I typed my own address into that little white box and I hit enter. Angelus. It came up second. There was a photograph of my front porch. There was a photograph of my kitchen. Angelus. With the mugs on the right. There was a photograph of my sunroom with the daybed made up in white linens I have never owned. Angelus. And across the top, Angelus, in gray letters. Angelus. The Moore Family Lake House. Angelus. Sleeps 12. Blue Ridge. Angelus. $840 a night. Angelus. 4.9 stars. Angelus. 118 reviews. Angelus. I want to say I screamed. Angelus. I didn't. I have never been quieter in my life than I was in that chair. I sat with my hands in my lap like a woman waiting at a bus stop, and I read those reviews from the bottom up. The oldest one was dated June of 2023. Angelus. 2023. 5 months before Kevin leaned back in Richard's chair at my Thanksgiving table and asked me, Angelus, real casual, Angelus, whether the lake place was in a trust or just in my name. Angelus. He was already renting it. He was already renting my house, Angelus, and he wanted to know how hard it would be to keep it. I read 118 reviews of my own home. Angelus. It took me 2 hours. Angelus. My back seized up and I didn't move. Somebody named Brandy from Tampa said the kitchen was a dream and the mugs were in a very intuitive spot. Somebody named Doug said the hydrangeas along the south fence were incredible. Angelus. Ask the owner about them. Angelus. He's very knowledgeable. Angelus. He's very knowledgeable. Angelus. Somebody named Priya said the host. Angelus. Kevin met them at the gate personally with a bottle of wine and told them the house had been in his family for generations. Angelus. Generations. I went out to my garage at 11 o'clock at night and I opened my trunk and I looked at 2 pieces of white oak snapped through the middle of my husband's name. Angelus. And I understood why a man puts a sign over his knee. You don't break a sign because you want a fresher look. You break it because a guest might ask who Richard was. Called Amelia at 7 the next morning. Angelus. She picked up on the second ring. Angelus. Which she had not done in 2 months. Angelus. Mom, wary. Angelus. Hi. Angelus. Good morning. Angelus. Sweetheart. Angelus. I want to ask you something and it's a strange question. Angelus. So bear with me. Angelus. Okay. Angelus. What are Kevin's parents' names? Angelus. Pause. Angelus. What? Angelus. Kevin's parents. You told me they were coming up for 3 weeks this summer. Angelus. That's why the house was crowded. Angelus. I want to know their names. Angelus. Mom, you know their names. Angelus. Bill and Susan. Angelus. That's right. Angelus. Bill and Susan. Angelus. Bill and Susan Moore. Angelus. From Macon. Angelus. I had the legal pad in front of me. Angelus. Honey, when did they get there? Angelus. When did they what? When did Bill and Susan get to the lake house? Angelus. What day? Pause was about 4 seconds long. Angelus. I counted it. They're coming later in the summer now. Angelus. Amelia said. Angelus. The plans changed. Angelus. Ah. Angelus. So they're not there. Angelus. Mom, why are you? Angelus. And Sophie's friend from camp. Angelus. What's her name? Angelus. Mom. Little girl from camp. Angelus. Coming to stay all summer. Angelus. Part of the reason there wasn't a daybed for me. Angelus. What is her name? Amelia. Angelus. Nothing. Angelus. You don't know her name. Angelus. I said, because there is no little girl from camp. Angelus. Is there? Mom, stop. Angelus. Where are you right now? Angelus. What? Angelus. Simple question, honey. Angelus. Right now. Angelus. This minute. Angelus. Where are you standing? Angelus. I'm at home. Angelus. At home in Atlanta. Angelus. Yes. Angelus. Not at the lake. Angelus. No. Angelus. So the house is too crowded for me. Angelus. I said, and nobody's in it. Angelus. And my daughter said. Angelus. Fast, and I could hear that she was crying already. Angelus. That's not. Angelus. Mom, it's complicated. It's not what you. Angelus, Amelia. Angelus, who is Brandy from Tampa? Angelus, silence. Angelus, total silence. Kind where you can hear the room. Angelus, I don't know what you're. Angelus, she started. Angelus, and then she stopped. Angelus, because she is my daughter and she has never once been able to finish a lie to my face. Angelus, she got it from her father. Richard couldn't lie either. Start one and then just quit halfway through and look at you. Brandy from Tampa gave the house 4 stars, I said. Angelus, August of last year. Angelus, she said the porch swing sticks. Angelus, which it does, honey. Sticks because it's the swing your father hung in 1000. Angelus, 989, and I moved it up there myself in a U-Haul. Angelus, and it has always stuck. Angelus, and I never fixed it because I liked the sound. Angelus, she was crying so hard I had to wait. Angelus, how long have you known? I said. Angelus, Mom. Angelus, how long? Not the whole time. Angelus, almost a whisper. Angelus, I swear to God. Angelus, Mom, not the whole time. Angelus, when? Angelus, last fall. Angelus, last fall. Angelus, you've known since last fall. Angelus, I said, and you sat at my table at Christmas and you ate my ham. Angelus, and she said, Angelus, and this is the thing I will hear for the rest of my life, she said. He said you'd be happy about the money. I hung up on my daughter for the first time in 38 years. Angelus, 3 days later. Angelus, on a Monday. Angelus, at 11 in the morning. Angelus, an email came. Angelus, not from Amelia. Angelus, not from Kevin. From a law firm in Alpharetta with 3 names in it and a little gold seal at the top of the letterhead. Angelus, I read it 4 times standing up in my kitchen. Angelus, and I want to tell you what it said. Angelus, because I still have it printed out and I keep it in the second drawer of that filing cabinet. Said that they represented Kevin and Amelia Moore. Said that their clients had made substantial improvements to the property over a period of years and had assumed primary responsibility for its maintenance. Angelus, upkeep and operation. Said that in light of my age and the geographic distance and the burden of ownership, Angelus, their clients believed the most sensible arrangement for all parties would be a voluntary transfer of title, Angelus, with a life estate reserved to me, Angelus, which is a fancy way of saying I could visit. Angelus, I could visit. Angelus, and then at the bottom, Angelus, the sentence. Angelus, I want to read it exactly. We believe this arrangement is better for the family. Angelus, better for the family. I stood in my kitchen and I read that 4 times, and then I did something I hadn't done since March of 2016. Angelus, I laughed and cried at the same time. Angelus, at the same time. Angelus, out loud in an empty house. Angelus, and I thought, Angelus, Richard, they put it in writing. Do you understand what they just did? Angelus, they put it in writing. I called Rachel and I read it to her over the phone, and when I finished, Angelus, there was a long pause, and then Rachel Williams said one word. Angelus, beautiful. Angelus, beautiful. Angelus, for 7 weeks I have had a lien I can't explain. Angelus, permits I can't source. Angelus, and a signature I can't attribute. And now 3 lawyers in Alpharetta have sent you a letter, Angelus, on letterhead, Angelus, saying that their clients made substantial improvements to your property. Angelus, she was almost singing. Angelus, they just told me who hired Cantrell. Angelus, I sat down. Angelus, say that slower. Angelus, they can't have it both ways, honey. Either they made the improvements, Angelus, in which case they hired the contractor and forged the permits, Angelus, or they didn't make the improvements, Angelus, in which case this letter is a lie in writing to a property owner in the state of Georgia. Angelus, there's no third door. They just closed it themselves. Angelus, Rachel, I said, what do I do? Nothing. Angelus, nothing. Angelus, nothing at all. Don't answer it. Angelus, don't call your daughter. Angelus, don't call him. Don't post anything anywhere. Angelus, Evelyn, and her voice changed. Angelus, are you listening to me? Angelus, this is the part where people lose. Angelus, right here. This is where the wronged party picks up the phone and gives away the whole case in 4 minutes because they cannot stand to be misunderstood for 1 more day. Angelus, they think I'm a doddering old woman. Angelus, good. Angelus, Rachel. Angelus, no, hear me. Angelus, good. Angelus, let them. Let them think it. Every single day they think that is a day they don't move money. Angelus, that stopped me. Angelus, what do you mean? Angelus, move money. There was a pause on that line. Evelyn, that house has grossed north of $200,000 in the last 3 years, Rachel said. Where do you think that went? I hadn't thought about it. Not once. I want you to understand that. In 7 weeks of legal pads and phone calls, I had thought about my husband's name and my mother's photograph and a chalk dinosaur, and I had not thought one single time about the money. Because I did not want the money. I wanted my daughter to be sorry. I don't know, I said. Neither do I, said Rachel. Yet. Doris came over that night with a bottle of wine and a rotisserie chicken, because that is what Doris does in a crisis. $200,000, she said. Give or take. Evelyn, do you know what Kevin does for a living? He's got a company. More logistics. He moves things for people. What things? Doris, I have no idea. I have never had any idea. In 15 years, that man has never once explained his job to me in a way I could repeat. I poured the wine. Amelia said it was a slow patch. September of last year. Everybody has a slow patch. Doris looked at me over her glass. Honey, in September of last year. Was your daughter driving that Tahoe? I put the bottle down. What? The Tahoe. The big white one. When did she get that? I sat very still. Christmas, I said. Christmas of when? Christmas of last year. Pulled up in it, and she was so proud. She made the kids stand in front of it for a picture. And I took the picture. Doris, I took the picture with my own phone. During the slow patch, said Doris. I got up from that table, and I went and got my phone, and I scrolled back through 1,100 photographs to December. And there it was. My daughter. My grandchildren. A white Chevrolet Tahoe with the temporary tag still in the back window, and I zoomed in on my daughter's face and I looked at it for a long time. She wasn't proud. I had it wrong for 7 months. She was scared. That's what that face was. I have seen that face on 800 children in 22 years, and I know it the way you know your own name, And my daughter was standing in front of a $60,000 truck on Christmas morning with the face of a child who has been made to hold something she knows is stolen. I sat down on my own stairs with that phone in my hands. Doris, I said. She's not the enemy. I know, honey. She's the hostage. And Doris, who does not lie to me, said she might be both. 2 weeks went by. It was the last week of July. The house was booked solid. I knew that because I'd checked the calendar on that listing every night, like a woman checking on a sick child. And every night my house was full of people whose names I would never know. Sleeping in my rooms, using my mugs, asking Kevin about my hydrangea. Thursday night at 9 o'clock, Rachel called me. Sit down. I'm standing in my kitchen. Rachel, I've decided to just live here now. Evelyn, I got Cantrell. I put my hand flat on the counter. You talked to him. I did. His name is Dale Cantrell. He's 61 years old. He's been building in Fannin County for 35 years. And Evelyn. He thought you were dead. He what? He asked me how long ago you passed. I could not speak. He said, and I heard her flipping pages. She'd written it down. He said the son-in-law told him the mother-in-law had left the property to the family, and there was some estate business to get through, but the family was handling everything. He said Kevin told him you'd passed in the spring of last year. I stood in my kitchen and I felt something happen in my chest that I have never felt before or since. I want to describe it correctly. It was not rage. I know rage. I've had rage. This was cold, and it was quiet, and it came up through me like water coming up through a basement floor, and it filled me all the way to the top, and then it just sat there. He killed me. That man sat across a table from a contractor in a truck yard in Ellijay, and he told him I was dead. He said the words. He arranged his face and he said, "My mother-in-law passed last spring, Angelus, and Dale Cantrell said, 'I'm sorry for your loss,' Angelus, and Kevin said, 'Thank you.' Angelus, Evelyn, Angelus, I'm here. Angelus, Dale Cantrell is very upset. He built a bathroom addition on your house, and he hasn't been paid $58,000, and he has now learned that the woman he believed to be deceased is the actual owner of the property, and is very much alive and is being represented by an attorney." Angelus. Rachel took a breath. Angelus. "Evelyn, that man is not our problem." Angelus. "That man is our witness." Angelus. "Rachel." Angelus. "He kept everything." Angelus. 35 years in the trade. Angelus. "He keeps everything." Angelus. "He has the signed contract." Angelus. "He has the emails." Angelus. "He has the text messages. He has a photograph of the permit taped to the front window of your house." Angelus. "And honey," Angelus, "he has the day and the date." Angelus. "Because his camera puts it on there." Angelus. "Rachel, he'll swear to it." Angelus. He said, and I'm quoting, Angelus, "Tell that lady I'll drive to Savannah myself." Angelus. And I said, Angelus, "Rachel, I need you to stop for a second." "What is it?" Angelus. "He told a man I was dead." Angelus. There was a long silence on that line. Angelus. "Yes," Rachel said. Angelus. "He did." Rachel, that's Angelus, I don't. My voice was doing the thing. Angelus. I hate when my voice does the thing. How do you tell somebody that? Angelus. How do you get your mouth around that? Angelus. He's been in my house. Angelus. He's eaten at my table. Carried my grandson on his shoulders in my backyard. And he sat somewhere and he said my mother-in-law is dead so he could put a bathroom in my house. Angelus. Evelyn. He didn't just want the house. Angelus. No. Angelus. He needed me gone. Angelus. Not away. Angelus. Gone. Because a dead woman doesn't answer the door. Angelus. Evelyn, I want you to listen to me now. Angelus. Because this is the most important thing I will ever say to you. Angelus. Rachel's voice was very steady. Angelus. That's not a family dispute anymore. Telling a contractor the owner is deceased in order to obtain services. Angelus. And signing that owner's name on a county permit application. Angelus. Is not rude. Angelus. It's not disrespectful. Angelus. It is a felony in the state of Georgia. Angelus. And it is not one felony. Angelus. It's a pattern. I looked at the clock on my kitchen wall. It said 9:17, and it was really 9:13, and it has been wrong since 1000. Angelus. 993, and I have never fixed it, because Richard bought it. What do you need from me? I said. Angelus. Time, said Rachel. Angelus. I need them to keep going. Angelus. Every single week they keep going. Angelus. They hand me another one. Angelus. So here's what you're going to do. Angelus. And Evelyn. Angelus. You're going to hate it. Angelus. Say it. Angelus. Nothing. You're going to do nothing for 6 weeks. You're not going to answer that letter. You're not going to call your daughter back. Angelus. And if Kevin calls you, Angelus, and Evelyn, Angelus, he will call you. Angelus. He hasn't called me in 7 years. Angelus. He'll call you. Angelus, said Rachel. Because that letter from Alpharetta is going to sit unanswered, Angelus, and a man like that cannot stand an unanswered letter. Angelus. He'll call. Angelus. And when he does, Angelus, you're going to be exactly who he thinks you are. Angelus. And who's that? Angelus. A sad, confused old woman. Angelus. Rachel said. Angelus. Who misses her grandchildren. Angelus. She called it to the day. Angelus. Kevin called me on a Tuesday. Angelus. The 19th of August. Angelus. At 4 in the afternoon. Angelus. I let it ring 3 times. I sat in that chair and I let my own phone ring 3 times and I put my hand flat on my chest the way you do. Angelus. And then I picked it up and I made my voice soft. Angelus. Kevin. Angelus. Hey, Ev, warm. Angelus. God, he was warm. How you doing? Angelus. Sweetheart. Angelus. Sweetheart. Angelus. I'm all right, I said. Angelus. It's hot. Angelus. It's brutal down there, isn't it? Angelus. Listen, Ev. Angelus. I wanted to call because I think this whole thing got away from everybody, and I hate that. Angelus. I hate it. Angelus. Amelia's a wreck. Angelus. Is she? Angelus. She cries every night. Angelus. Every night. Angelus. Ev, he let that sit. Angelus. He is very good. Angelus. I want to be fair to him. Angelus. He is genuinely very good at this. Angelus. And I keep thinking, Angelus, this is a family. This is a family, and we've got lawyers in it now, and that's not who we are. Angelus. No, I said. Angelus. That's not who we are. Angelus. Right. So I'm just gonna talk to you straight, Angelus, the way I'd want somebody to talk to me. Angelus, Ev, that letter was a mistake. Angelus, it was too much. Amelia's guy drafted it and I read it and I thought, Angelus, oh, this is gonna hurt her feelings. Angelus, and I said so. Did you? Angelus, I did. Angelus, I said that to her. Angelus, I said, Amelia. Angelus, your mother's gonna read this and think we're coming after her. Angelus, that's what I thought I said. Kills me. Angelus, he was so pleased. Angelus, Ev, nobody's coming after you. Angelus, here's the actual situation. Angelus, and I'm just gonna be honest with you, because you deserve honest. Angelus, that property is a money pit. Angelus, you know it. Angelus, I know it. The roof's at end of life. There's a drainage problem on the north side that is gonna become a foundation problem. Angelus, and you're 4 hours away and you're… Angelus, forgive me. Angelus, you're not 50 anymore. Angelus, no, I said. Angelus, I'm not 50 anymore. Angelus, and it kills me watching you carry that. Angelus, it does. Angelus, so all we're saying, Angelus, all anybody's ever been saying, Angelus, is let us take the weight. Keep the right to be there whenever you want. Angelus, nothing changes for you. Angelus, nothing. Angelus, except you stop lying awake worrying about a roof. Angelus, I closed my eyes. I want you to know what I was doing in that moment. Angelus, I was looking at my legal pad. Angelus, it was on my knee. Angelus, and on it was written, Angelus, in my own handwriting, Angelus, the words occupancy 12, Angelus, and the words she thought I was dead. Angelus, no, he told a man I was dead. Angelus, and the number 118. Angelus, Kevin, I said. Angelus, can I ask you something? Angelus, anything. Have you been up to the house this summer? Angelus, half a second. Angelus, that's all it was. Angelus, half a second of nothing. Angelus, here and there, he said. Angelus, weekends. Because Amelia told me the house was crowded. Angelus, Kevin's parents. Angelus, and the kids' friends. Angelus, that's why I couldn't come. Angelus, right, yeah. Angelus, that fell apart. Angelus, my folks bailed. Angelus, Dad's back. Angelus, Bill's back. Angelus, been giving him hell for years. Angelus, I said. Kevin, is there anybody in my house right now? Angelus, silence. Angelus, say again. Angelus, right now. This minute. Angelus, Tuesday afternoon. Angelus, 4 o'clock. Angelus, is there a person in my house? And I heard him take one breath through his nose. Angelus, no, he said. Angelus, why? And I want you to remember that, Angelus, because it matters later. Angelus, he said no. There were 7 people in my house at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, the 19th of August. Angelus, a family from Ohio named Whitaker. Angelus, they'd checked in Saturday. Angelus, they stayed 8 days. They left a 5-star review on the 2nd of September that said the house was magical and the host was so accommodating and that they'd already booked for next year. Angelus, no reason, I said. Angelus, I just miss it. Angelus, and Kevin Moore said, Ev. Angelus, and then he said, Angelus, hey, listen. Angelus, what if I got the kids on the phone this week? Angelus, Levi's been asking about you. Angelus, that's the one. Angelus, out of everything. That's the one I couldn't breathe through. He used my grandson. Angelus, sitting somewhere in Atlanta. Angelus, with my house full of strangers from Ohio and my name signed on a county document and my death in a contractor's ear. Angelus, he reached over and picked up my 6-year-old grandson and held him out in front of himself like a card in a game. Angelus, I'd like that, I said. Angelus, yeah, okay. Angelus, yeah. Angelus, I'll set it up. Angelus, I could hear him smiling. Angelus, and Ev, listen. Angelus, just think about what I said. Angelus, no pressure. There's no clock on it. Angelus, there's no clock on it. Angelus, I repeated. Angelus, none. Angelus, take all the time you need. Angelus, I said, thank you, Kevin. Angelus, and he said, Angelus, love you, Ev. Angelus, and I said nothing at all. Angelus, and he hung up. Angelus, I sat in that chair for a long time after. Then I called Rachel. Angelus, he called. Angelus, when? Angelus, 4 o'clock. Angelus, what'd he say? Angelus, he said there's no clock on it. Angelus, Rachel was quiet a second. Angelus, Evelyn, she said. Angelus, there's a clock on it. Angelus, I know. Angelus, no, I mean there's an actual clock. Angelus, under Georgia law. Angelus, that mechanic's lien has to be enforced within a certain window or it's dead. Angelus, Cantrell's got to sue somebody. Angelus, and when he sues, Angelus, Evelyn, he sues the property. Angelus, he sues you. Angelus, that's how it works. Which means there is going to be a lawsuit with your name on one side of it and Dale Cantrell on the other. Angelus, and everything. Angelus, every document. Angelus, every permit. Angelus, every signature. Angelus, becomes part of a public record in a courtroom in Fannin County. Angelus, I stood up. Angelus, Kevin knows that, I said. Angelus, Kevin knows that. That's why he called me today. Angelus, that's why he called you today. Angelus, said Rachel. Angelus, he's not being kind, honey. Angelus, he's running out of road. And I stood in my kitchen and I thought about a man saying, take all the time you need to a woman he knows has none. Angelus, and I thought about 118 strangers sleeping in my rooms. Angelus, and I thought about my mother's photograph in a cardboard box in a basement that floods. Angelus, Rachel, I said. Angelus, I want to see it. Angelus, see what? Angelus, the house. Angelus, I want to see what he did to it. I've been looking at pictures of my own kitchen on a computer screen like a woman looking through a window at her own life, and I want to stand in it. Angelus, Evelyn, you can't go up there. If you show up and there's a confrontation, Angelus, if there's one raised voice, Angelus, one neighbor calling the sheriff, Angelus, I'm going to be defending you instead of him. Angelus, I'm not going to raise my voice. Angelus, Evelyn pulled Richard's chair out and I sat down at his desk and I put my hand on that mouse. The house is available the week of September 15th. Angelus, I'm looking at it right now. $840 a night. There was the longest pause of our entire 20-year relationship. Angelus, Evelyn Carter. Angelus, Rachel said. Angelus, what are you doing? Angelus, I'm going to rent my own house, I said. Angelus, from my son-in-law. Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, he wants a guest, I said. I'll be a guest. Angelus, and I typed in a name that wasn't mine. Angelus, I typed in Ellen Whitfield. Angelus, Ellen was my mother's first name. Angelus, Whitfield was the school. I sat at Richard's desk at 11 o'clock at night and I made up a woman and I gave her my mother's name and my building's name and a Gmail address I created in about 90 seconds. Angelus, and I want you to know my hands were steady the whole time. Angelus, 22 years of running a school. You learn some things. You learn that people will believe almost anything about you as long as it's boring. Rachel called me at 7 the next morning. Angelus, you didn't do it. Angelus, good morning to you too. Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, 6 nights. 15th through the 21st of September. $5,040 plus a cleaning fee of $425. Angelus, which I would like on the record is highway robbery. Angelus, that house cleans in 3 hours if you know where the vacuum is. Angelus, and I do because I bought it. There was a silence on that line that I could have parked a truck in. You paid your son-in-law $5,000. Angelus, Rachel said. Angelus, I paid my son-in-law $5,465. Angelus, I said, to sleep in my own bed. Angelus, and Rachel. Angelus, I want you to think for 1 second about what that receipt looks like sitting in front of a judge. Angelus, she stopped. I heard her stop. I heard the exact half-second where my attorney went from being furious with me to doing arithmetic. Angelus, say that again. Angelus, she said slowly. You've been telling me for 2 months that you need paper. You need a document that puts Kevin Moore in the position of collecting money from a house he doesn't own. Angelus, I looked at that confirmation email on Richard's screen. Rachel, he's about to send me a receipt. Angelus, with his name on it. Angelus, for my house. Rachel Williams did not say anything for a while. Angelus, then she said, Angelus, Ellen Whitfield. Angelus, that's right. Angelus, your mother. Angelus, that's right. I need to say the lawyer thing out loud now. Angelus, and then I need you to let me say the other thing. Angelus, say the lawyer thing. Angelus, if you go up there and it goes sideways. Angelus, if there is one raised voice. Angelus, if he lays a hand on you or you lay a hand on him, or a sheriff's deputy writes one report with your name spelled right. Angelus, everything I've built for you is gone. Angelus, everything. Angelus, 2 months of work. Angelus, you understand. Angelus, yes. Now here's the other thing. Angelus, her voice dropped. Angelus, take pictures of everything. Angelus, I laughed out loud. Angelus, Rachel. Angelus, everything, Evelyn. Angelus, every room. Angelus, every wall, every piece of paper you can see without opening a drawer. Angelus. And I'm going to say that again in a minute in a different tone of voice, so we both remember I said it. Angelus. And take somebody with you. Angelus. Do not go into that house alone. I want a second set of eyes, and I want a second person who can testify. Angelus. And I do not want you standing in your husband's house by yourself when whatever's in there hits you. Angelus. I'll take Doris. Good, said Rachel, because Doris scares me and I've never met her. Confirmation from the host came in at 9:14 that same morning. Angelus. I want to read you the whole thing. Angelus. Because I still have it. Angelus. And because there is not one word in it that isn't a knife. Angelus. Hi, Ellen. Kevin here. Angelus. So glad you found us. This place has been in our family a long time and we love sharing it. Angelus. Couple things. Angelus. The porch swing sticks. Angelus. Don't fight it. Angelus. It's got character. Angelus. Lockbox code is on the gate. Angelus. I'll send it the morning of. My grandmother planted the hydrangeas along the south fence, and they're at their best right now. Angelus. Worth a walk. Angelus. Anything at all. Angelus. You call me. Angelus. We take care of our guests. Angelus. Kevin. My grandmother planted the hydrangeas along the south fence. Angelus. I read that sentence maybe 40 times. I planted those hydrangeas on the 11th and 12th of October. Angelus. 2018. Angelus. And I know that because I wrote it on the back of the tag and stuck the tag in a coffee can in the shed the way my mother taught me. Angelus. And they took 2 full years to decide they wanted to live. Angelus. And there was one October where I sat on the ground in front of them and told them out loud that Richard would have wanted them to try. Angelus. His grandmother planted them. Angelus. That woman is alive. Angelus. By the way. Angelus. Susan Moore. Angelus. Of Macon, Georgia. Angelus. 69 years old. I've eaten Thanksgiving dinner with her 4 times, and she has never in her life put a bulb in the ground. He didn't even bother to kill her off. Angelus. He just borrowed her. Doris came over that night, and I showed her the message on my phone, and she read it twice, and then she set the phone face down on my table like it was something she didn't want looking at her. Angelus. When do we leave? She said. Angelus. You don't have to. Angelus. Evelyn Carter. Angelus. Don't insult me. Angelus. Doris. It's 6 days. Angelus. It's a long way. Angelus. Frank needs you. Frank is 71 years old, and he has been waiting since 1000. Angelus. 974 for 6 days alone in his own house. Angelus. Doris said. Angelus. He'll be fine. He'll eat cereal for dinner and watch things I don't allow. Angelus. She picked her coffee back up. Angelus. What are we? Angelus. By the way. Angelus. For the story. Angelus. What do you mean? Angelus. When somebody asks. Angelus. At the gas station. Angelus. In the little grocery. Angelus. What are we? Angelus. I thought about it. Angelus. Sisters, I said. Doris looked at me for a second, and her chin did something. Angelus. All right, she said. Angelus. Sisters. We left Savannah at 6:15 in the morning on Monday. Angelus. September 15th. Angelus. 4 hours and 10 minutes. Told you I know that drive better than I know my own hallway. Angelus. And I want you to understand that for 2 hours neither one of us said a word about any of it. Angelus. We talked about a girl we taught in 1000. Angelus. 994, who is now a cardiologist in Charlotte. We talked about whether Doris's knee needed the surgery. Talked about nothing. Angelus. And then somewhere past Gainesville. Angelus. Doris said. Angelus. Without looking at me. Angelus. What are you hoping for? Angelus. What? Angelus. In the house. What are you hoping you find? Angelus. And I opened my mouth to say evidence. Angelus. And what came out was, my mother. Angelus. Doris didn't say anything. There's a picture of her at Tybee in a bathing suit in 1000. Angelus. 961, I said. She's laughing at whoever's holding the camera. Angelus. I've had it since I was 3 years old, Doris. Angelus. It's been on every wall I've ever had. And I put it in that front room in 2019, and I patched the plaster around it myself, and it is in a cardboard box in a basement that floods. Doris put her hand on my arm and left it there for about 10 miles. The lockbox code came in by text at 9:40. Angelus. 4 digits. Angelus. 1974. 1974 is the year I married Richard. I sat in that Shell station in Blairsville with a coffee going cold in the cup holder, and I looked at those 4 numbers on my phone, and I could not make my hands turn the key. Evelyn. Angelus, he used our anniversary. Angelus, Doris leaned over and looked. Angelus, are you sure? Angelus, could be anything. Angelus, could be random. Doris, the man doesn't know my anniversary. Angelus, I was laughing. Angelus, it came out wrong. Angelus, he doesn't know it. Angelus, he has never known it. Angelus, that's not. Angelus, he didn't pick it to be cruel. Angelus, he picked it because it was already written down somewhere. Written down where? Angelus, and I said, Angelus, on the deed. Because the deed says November of 2017. But the estate paperwork, Angelus, Richard's paperwork, Angelus, the paperwork I signed in Rachel's office in 2016 with my husband 4 months in the ground, Angelus, that has our marriage date on every single page. Angelus, he had Richard's estate file. Angelus, he'd been in my filing cabinet. I got to the gate at 10:51 in the morning. Angelus, there was a new sign on it. Angelus, not the one from June. Angelus, a nicer one. Angelus, professionally made. Angelus, and it said the Moore Family Lake House, and underneath in smaller letters it said Est. 2019, and underneath that, Angelus, and I am not making this up, Angelus, it said, please respect our neighbors. Angelus, quiet hours after 10 p.m. Angelus, our neighbors. I punched in 1974, and the gate opened, and I drove up my own driveway with a woman I've known for 40 years sitting beside me, holding her purse in both hands. Angelus, and Doris said, Angelus, very quietly, Angelus, oh, Evelyn. Angelus, because the hydrangeas were gone. Angelus, everyone. Angelus, the whole run along the south fence. Angelus, all 9 of them. Angelus, and in their place was gravel, and 4 of those big round planters you buy at a garden center with something in them I couldn't even identify from the car. I sat in that driveway with the engine running for I don't know how long. Angelus, they were an obstruction. Angelus, I said finally. Angelus, what? Angelus, for the cars. Angelus, sleeps 12, Doris. 12 people is 4 cars. They needed the turnaround. Angelus, Evelyn, honey. Angelus, get out of the car. Angelus, he wrote to me. He wrote to me in an email 11 days ago and said his grandmother planted them and they're at their best right now. Angelus, worth a walk. Angelus, and Doris. Angelus, he tore them out. Tore them out, and he still wrote it. Angelus, Evelyn. He didn't even know they were gone. Angelus, I turned and looked at her. Angelus, do you understand? Angelus, that's the part. He didn't write it to hurt me. Angelus, he copied and pasted it. Angelus, it's boilerplate. He sent that same paragraph to 118 people, and he has never once walked out to the south fence. Angelus, Doris said. Angelus, give me the keys. Angelus, Doris, give me the keys. Angelus, honey, and get out of the car. Angelus, because we are not doing this in a driveway. Angelus, the front door has a keypad on it now. I want to sit with that for a second. Angelus, my front door. Angelus, the door I stripped and sanded and hung myself in 2018 with a rented router because the old one was rotted at the base. Angelus, has a plastic keypad on it where the lock used to be. Angelus, I put in 1974. Angelus, it beeped and unlocked. Angelus, and I walked into my house as a guest for the first time in my life. Angelus, at 10:58 in the morning on the 15th of September. And Doris walked in behind me and shut the door and said, well, the mugs were on the right. Angelus, that's what I noticed first. Not the paint. Angelus, not the furniture. Angelus, not the wooden sign in the front room that says Lake Life in cursive letters like a cheerful little tombstone. Angelus, the mugs. My daughter screamed at me on the phone in May about mugs. Angelus, she said I reorganize her kitchen. Angelus, she said she puts them on the left and I move them to the right and she has to stand there and be grateful. Angelus, they were on the right. They've been on the right since 2019 because that's the cabinet nearest the coffee maker, and I am not an idiot. Angelus, Doris. Angelus, I see it. Angelus, she's never even. Angelus, Doris, they're on the right. They've always been on the right. Angelus, she wasn't remembering. Angelus, she was reciting. Angelus, reciting what? Angelus, somebody else's complaint. And I stood in my own kitchen at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I understood something that took the legs out from under me worse than the locks did in June. My daughter didn't hate having me there. My daughter was told she hated having me there. Somebody sat with her, Angelus, over months, Angelus, maybe years, Angelus, and handed her one grievance at a time until she had a whole collection of them, Angelus, and she never noticed that not one of them was hers. Angelus, the chalk, Angelus, the mugs, Angelus, the good towels, the museum. Every single one of those came out of her mouth in May like she'd been holding it for a decade, Angelus and Doris, Angelus. The chalk was in 2021 and I have the photograph. He didn't turn my daughter against me. He wrote her a script. I sat down on my own kitchen floor for the second time in 3 months and Doris let me. Angelus, we started at 11:30. Doris took the phone because my hands weren't right, and she went room to room and photographed everything, Angelus. And she is a 4th-grade teacher for 19 years, and she is thorough in a way that would frighten you. Angelus, the study was gone. Angelus, Richard's study, Angelus, the room where his books were, Angelus, was a bathroom. Angelus, a very nice bathroom. Angelus, double vanity. Angelus, tile you can tell cost money. That's Dale Cantrell's work, and I'll say this for the man, Angelus. He builds beautifully. The books were not in it. Angelus, the sunroom had 4 beds in it. Angelus, 4. Angelus, not the day bed. Angelus, 4 in a room that is maybe 12 by 14. Angelus, jammed in like a barracks. Angelus, because that's how you get to 12. I asked my daughter if I could sleep on the day bed in the sunroom, and she said the house was too crowded, and there were 4 beds in that room, and none of them were mine. Angelus, upstairs in what used to be my room. Angelus, in my closet. Angelus, there were plastic bins with labels on them. Angelus, guest linens. Angelus, guest towels. Angelus, paper goods. Angelus, my clothes weren't in the house. I want to say that plainly because I still can't quite get my arms around it. Angelus, my clothes were not in the house. Angelus, my robe, my winter coat that lived up there. Angelus, my slippers. Angelus, the sweater of Richard's that I kept in the back and never wore and just wanted to be able to touch. Angelus, gone. Angelus, not moved. Angelus, not boxed. Angelus, gone. Angelus, at 12:40 in the afternoon. Angelus, standing in an empty closet in a room I paid for. Angelus, I said out loud. Angelus, I don't exist here. Angelus, and Doris said, Angelus, then let's go find you. The basement stairs are behind the kitchen, and I have gone down them 1,000 times, and I went down them that day holding the rail with both hands like an old woman, Angelus, and I'm going to be honest with you, Angelus, I was praying, not for the photographs, Angelus, I was praying, Angelus, please God, Angelus, let them just not be here. Let him have thrown them in a dumpster in 2019. Angelus, let it be clean. Angelus, let me not have to see it. Angelus, they were there. Angelus, 2 cardboard boxes. Angelus, in the corner. Angelus, on the floor. Angelus, and Doris got to them before me and she stopped. Angelus, and she put her hand up. Angelus, and she said, Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, wait. Angelus, move. Doris. Angelus, honey, wait. Angelus, move. Angelus, the sump pump failed. Angelus, I know exactly when, Angelus, because it's a 2018 pump with a 5-year float, and I did the math later, and it doesn't matter. Angelus, it doesn't matter. Angelus, it failed. There was maybe an inch of standing water in that corner, and there had been more at some point, and the bottoms of both boxes had gone to pulp. Angelus, I got down on the floor. Angelus, 67 years old. Angelus, in an inch of water. Angelus, in the dark. Angelus, and I went through those boxes, was one frame at a time, and Doris knelt down beside me with her bad knee and did it with me and did not say one single word for 20 minutes. Amelia's kindergarten picture with the missing tooth was fine. Angelus, perfect. Angelus, not a mark on it. Angelus, it was at the top. Richard's father in uniform, fine. Angelus, my wedding photo. Richard with that ridiculous mustache in 1000. Angelus, 974. Angelus, it was in the second box. Angelus, and the glass had gone green. Angelus, and the paper had lifted off the mat and buckled. Angelus, and Richard's face. Angelus, the left side of Richard's face. Angelus, was a brown cloud. Put it down and I picked up the next one. Richard in the hospital chair holding Amelia at 3 days old. Angelus, looking at her like she'd invented light. Angelus, that one was fine. Angelus, that one was completely fine. Angelus, and I don't know why. Angelus, I don't know what physics decided that. Angelus, and I held it and I said thank you out loud to nobody. Angelus, to the room. Angelus, to God, to a sump pump. Angelus, I don't know. Angelus, and then Doris said Evelyn. Angelus, she was holding the bottom of the second box. Angelus, my mother is a piece of paper now. I want to say this once and then I'm going to move on because I'm not going to be able to do it twice. Angelus, Tybee Island. Angelus, 1000. Angelus, 961. Angelus, a woman in a bathing suit laughing at whoever's holding the camera. Angelus, which was my father. Angelus, and she is laughing at my father who died when I was 19, and I have never had a recording of her voice. And that photograph was how I remembered that she was a person and not just a mother. Angelus, there was a shape on that paper. Angelus, there was a lighter part where the sky was. Angelus, that's all. I sat in the water in my own basement and I made a sound I have never made in my life. Doris says I said no about 30 times. Angelus, I don't remember that. Angelus, I remember Doris's arms and I remember thinking. Angelus, with total clarity. Angelus, the way you think in a car accident. Angelus, he didn't do this on purpose. Angelus, that was the thought. Angelus, that was the thought that came. Angelus, sitting in the water. Angelus, holding a piece of paper. Angelus, he didn't do this on purpose. Angelus, he would have. Angelus, if he'd thought of it. Angelus, he'd have done it. Angelus, but he didn't think of it. Carried my mother down a set of stairs in a box in February, and he set her on a concrete floor, and he went back up and he never thought about it again. Angelus, not one time. Angelus, not for 1 second. Angelus, because she was not a person to him. Angelus, she was clutter. Angelus, that's worse. I need somebody to understand that that is worse. Angelus, malice would have meant she mattered. Angelus, we came up at 2:15. Angelus, Doris made tea. Angelus, in my kitchen. Angelus, with the mugs on the right. Put it in front of me and she said, Angelus, say something. Angelus, I want to go home. Angelus, okay, I want to go home. Angelus, Doris, I've got what I came for. Angelus, I can't be in here. Okay, honey. Angelus, I'll call Rachel from the car. Angelus, she's got the receipt. Angelus, she's got the pictures. Angelus, that's enough. Angelus, that's more than enough. All right, Angelus, said Doris. Let's pack the car. Angelus, and I stood up. And I want you to know that I was going to leave. I was going to leave and I'd have never known and my whole life would have been different. Angelus, and I got as far as the hallway and I stopped. Angelus, because Doris said, Angelus, from behind me. Angelus, Evelyn, what's in the office? Angelus, the old guest room. Angelus, the one Kevin took in March. Angelus, that I said sure about. Angelus, sure. Angelus, the door was locked. Angelus, a bedroom door. Angelus, in a rental house. Angelus, with a lock on it that doesn't belong on a bedroom door. I stood there and I looked at that lock and Doris came and stood next to me. There's a listing on the internet, Angelus, Doris said. Angelus, that says 12 people can stay in this house. Angelus, and one of the rooms is locked. Angelus, he'd have to lock it. Business papers in there. Angelus, Evelyn. Angelus, what? Angelus, Doris said. Angelus, you own the door. Angelus, I want to be very careful here. Angelus, because Rachel is going to hear this. Angelus, and Rachel told me twice in one phone call not to open drawers. Angelus, I did not break that lock. Angelus, I went out to the shed. Angelus, which is my shed. Angelus, and in it was my toolbox. Angelus, which is my toolbox. Angelus, and in my toolbox was a flathead screwdriver. Angelus, and I came back and I took the hinges off the door of a room in my house. Angelus, it took 11 minutes. Angelus, my hands hurt for 2 days. The door came off at 3:10 in the afternoon. There was a desk in there and a chair and a filing cabinet and 4 bank boxes. Angelus, and Doris started photographing before I'd even set the door down. Angelus, mail. There was a stack of mail 6 inches high and every single piece of it was addressed to Moore Logistics, LLC. Angelus, 4000. Angelus, 114 Cutter Ridge Road. Angelus, Blue Ridge, Georgia. Angelus, that's my address. Angelus, his company is registered at my house. Angelus, Doris, take that. Angelus, all of it. Every envelope. Angelus, front and back. Angelus, get the postmarks. Angelus, I'm getting it. There were bills. There were what I now know are called final notices, and I know that because they say final notice in red, Angelus. And there were 4 of them from a company in Kentucky, Angelus. And there was a letter from a bank that I photographed and did not read because my eyes wouldn't work, Angelus. And on the desk, Angelus, right on top, Angelus, right there, Angelus, out in the open, Angelus, there was a legal pad, Angelus, yellow, Angelus, ordinary. The same kind I've been keeping my list on since June, Angelus, and isn't that a thing, Angelus? Isn't that a thing that we were both writing on the same paper? Angelus, I picked it up. The first page had a phone number on it and the word Dale. Angelus, I turned it over. Angelus, and the second page was my signature. Angelus, Evelyn R. Angelus, Carter. Angelus, 12 times. Angelus, down the left side of the page. Angelus, 12 times. Angelus, and then on the right side, Angelus, 12 more, Angelus, and then the next page, Angelus, and the next page, Angelus. And I stood in that room and I turned 4 pages of a yellow legal pad covered in my own name, Angelus. Somebody had practiced. Somebody sat at that desk with a pen and practiced my signature, Angelus, over and over, Angelus, the way you'd practice a spelling word, Angelus, until they could do it without thinking, Angelus, and you could watch it get better. Angelus, that's what I couldn't stop looking at. Angelus, the first ones on page 1 are careful and slow and wrong, Angelus, and by the bottom of page 3 they're loose and fast and they are perfect, Angelus, they are absolutely perfect, Angelus, they are my signature, Angelus, I would have sworn to it in a courtroom, Angelus, Doris, Angelus, I see it, Angelus, Doris, take the picture, Angelus, I'm taking it, Angelus, honey, I've got it, Angelus, I've got it, Angelus, and then I stopped, Angelus, because I was looking at page 2, Angelus, at the top, Angelus, at the first 3 or 4 attempts, Angelus, the bad ones, Angelus, the ones before whoever it was got the hang of it, Angelus, and I know that handwriting, Angelus, I taught that handwriting. I sat at a kitchen table in Savannah in 1000, Angelus, 993 with a little girl and a pencil with a rubber grip on it, and I taught her to make a capital E, Angelus, because she was making it with 4 separate strokes, and I showed her how to do it in 2, Angelus. And there is a way that girl comes off the bottom of a capital C that she has done her entire life and that I would know at the bottom of the ocean. Angelus, the first ones aren't Kevin's. Angelus, the first ones are Amelia's. I put that legal pad down on the desk, and I walked out of that room, and I went out onto my own porch, and I sat down on the steps, and I could not breathe. Doris came out and sat next to me and didn't touch me. Angelus, it's her, I said. Angelus, I know. Angelus, Doris, it's her. Angelus, she sat at that desk. Angelus, she sat right there and she practiced my name. Angelus, I know, honey. Angelus, she's not the hostage. Angelus, my voice came apart. Angelus, I've been saying it for 2 months. Angelus, I've been telling everybody. Angelus, she's the hostage. Angelus, she's scared. Angelus, I saw her face on Christmas morning. Angelus, and Doris. Angelus, she practiced my name 12 times a page. Angelus, 12 times. That's not a woman being made to do something. Angelus, that takes an afternoon. Doris said nothing. Angelus, say something. Angelus, what do you want me to say? Angelus, tell me I'm wrong. Angelus, I'm not going to lie to you. Angelus, Doris said. Angelus, I've never once lied to you. Angelus, and we sat on those steps. And after a while, Doris said the thing that I have thought about every day since. Angelus, Evelyn, can I say a hard thing? Nothing's hard anymore. Practiced it because she wanted to get it right. Angelus, Doris was looking straight out at the road. Angelus, think about that. Person who doesn't care doesn't practice. Could have scrawled it. Nobody at that county office would have known the difference. Angelus, they've never seen your signature in their lives. She sat there for an afternoon and she filled 4 pages until it was perfect. Angelus, I turned and looked at her. Angelus, so who was she doing it for? Angelus, said Doris. Angelus, because it wasn't the county. Angelus, I didn't understand. Angelus, she was doing it for him. Angelus, Doris said. Angelus, somebody was standing over her. Angelus, and somebody said, Angelus, that's not good enough. Angelus, do it again. Angelus, I put my face in my hand. Angelus, that's not better, Doris. Angelus, no, she said. Angelus, it's not better. Angelus, it's just true. Angelus, it was 4:50 in the afternoon. I know that because I looked at my phone to call Rachel. And I had it in my hand, and my thumb was on her name, and that is when I heard the car. Doris stood up first. Doris is faster than me now. That's a thing that happened somewhere in the last 5 years, and I never noticed it happen. Evelyn. I hear it. Honey, get inside. No. Evelyn Carter. We are two women alone at the end of a private road 4 hours from home, and there is a car coming up your driveway. Get inside. I stood up. I put my hand on the porch post. The post I set myself in 2018. And I stood there on my own steps with a bent key in my purse and my mother in a Ziploc bag on the kitchen counter. And I watched that car come up my driveway. It wasn't his truck. It was a white Chevrolet Tahoe. And it stopped about 40 feet short. The way you stop when you've seen something you didn't expect. And it sat there with the engine running for a long time. And then the door opened. My daughter got out. She was alone. No kids. No Kevin. She had on the same gray cardigan she wears on airplanes. And she stood behind that open door, holding it like a shield, and she looked at me on the porch, and she did not move. Nobody said anything for about 10 seconds. Then Amelia said, "Mom." And I said, "Hello, sweetheart." And she said, and her voice broke completely in half. "Mom, what are you doing here?" And I looked at my daughter across 40 feet of my own gravel. "I rented it," I said. 6 nights. $5,465. I let that sit. "Your husband sent me the code this morning. Told me his grandmother planted the hydrangeas." Amelia put her hand over her mouth. "Come up here," I said. "Mom." And I heard my own voice go somewhere I have not let it go since 1997. "Come up onto this porch and come into this house and sit down at that kitchen table. Right now." And she came. She came up those steps like a child. And she stopped in front of me. And she was crying so hard she couldn't get air. And she reached for me. And for the first time in 38 years, I stepped back. She stopped. Her hands were still up. "Mom." "Sit down," I said. "I've been in the office." And I watched every ounce of blood go out of my daughter's face. "Sit down, sweetheart," I said. "We're going to talk about the 17th of March. She sat down at my kitchen table at 4:56 in the afternoon. Doris put a cup of tea in front of her without being asked, which is the single kindest thing I have ever watched one human being do to another, because Doris knew exactly what was about to happen in that room, and she gave my daughter something to hold. I put the legal pad on the table between us. I didn't say anything. I just turned it to page 2 and I slid it across. Amelia looked at it for a long time. "Mom." "Whose is it?" "Mom, please. Whose handwriting is on the top of that page?" And my daughter, 38 years old, looked at 4 pages of my name and said, in a voice I hadn't heard since she was 9 and broke a lamp, "Mine." "Say the whole thing." "It's mine." "It's my handwriting. 'Cause Doris is a witness and I want her to hear it." "It's mine." She slammed her hand flat on that table, and the tea went over and nobody moved to clean it up. "It's mine." "Okay, it's mine." "It's my handwriting." "I did it. I sat in that room and I did it." "Is that what you want?" "Yes," I said. "That is exactly what I want." And then she broke. I have seen my daughter cry maybe 6 times in her adult life. This wasn't that. This was something coming out of a body sideways. And I sat across from her with my hands folded and I let it happen. And Doris stood at my counter. And the water went off that table onto the floor a drop at a time. "March 17th, I said, when she could hear me. "How do you know that date?" "'Cause it's on the permit application." "Fannin County stamps everything, honey." "That's their whole job." I kept my voice flat. March 17th of this year. Somebody submitted a change of use application on this house. Requesting reclassification from single-family residential to short-term rental. Occupancy 12. And signed it Evelyn R. Carter. Was that you? She nodded. Out loud. Yes. And October of last year. The building permit for the bathroom. Yes. Both of them. Yes. I want to tell you what I felt right then, and I'm going to have to be honest, even though it doesn't make me look good. Relief. She said yes. She didn't lie. 2 months I'd been building a case against my own child in my own head. And I had gotten all the way to a kitchen table with the evidence in front of me. And I had genuinely believed she would look me in the face and say it wasn't her. She said yes on the first ask. And some tiny, stupid, mother part of me sat back in that chair and thought, oh, thank God, she's still in there. Why? I said. And Amelia said, because he was going to lose everything. I waited. More logistics. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand. Mom, it's been gone since 2022. It's been gone for 3 years. Gone how? Gone. There's no company. There's a website and a phone number and an LLC he pays $140 a year to keep alive in the state of Georgia. She laughed, and it was the worst sound I've ever heard come out of a person I love. He lost the Kentucky contract in March of 2022. That was the company. That was 90% of the company. And he came home and he didn't tell me for 5 months. 5 months. 5 months, Mom. He got up. Every day. Suit on. Out the door at 7:15. He sat in a Roswell Road for 5 months. Doris made a sound at the counter. How'd you find out? A card declined at the Publix. Amelia was looking at the table. $216 of groceries and a line behind me, and I called him and I said, the card's not working, and he said, try the other one. And I said, which other one? Kevin, and he was quiet for about 4 seconds. She looked up. That's how I found out my life wasn't real. In a checkout line. 4 seconds of quiet. And the house. The house was already going. Her voice went dead flat. That's the part you don't know. He started renting it in the spring of 2023, and he didn't tell me either. I sat up. What? Mom, I didn't know until October. She was looking right at me now. Last October. I found a cleaning invoice in the truck. A cleaning invoice. In Blue Ridge. For $425. And I thought it was a mistake. I thought it was for somebody else. And I sat in that truck in a parking lot and I put the address into my phone. And you found the listing. I found the listing. She put both hands over her face. 118 reviews, Mom. 118. Same as you. Same exact screen. I sat in a Kroger parking lot and I read reviews of my mother's kitchen. Amelia, my hands were shaking. You found it in October. And you signed a permit in March. Yes. 5 months later. You sat at that desk and you practiced my name. Yes. Explain that to me. And she said, because by then I was in it. I didn't understand. I said so. Mom, when I found out, I told him it was over. I told him I was calling you that night. I had the phone in my hand. She stopped. And he said, go ahead. He said, call her. And then he said, Amelia, whose name is on the bank account the money's been going into for 18 months. The room went absolutely silent. Doris put a hand on the back of my chair. Say that again, I said. It's a joint account. Amelia's voice was a whisper. It's got my name on it. It's had my name on it since 2019 because it was supposed to be for the kids' college. Every dollar that came out of this house went into it. Mom. Every dollar. 18 months. Angelus, before I knew it existed. Angelus, how much? Angelus, at its peak. Angelus, about 209,000. Angelus, and now? Angelus, she said, $1,100. Angelus, I got up out of my chair. Angelus, I couldn't sit any more. I went and stood by my own sink like a woman in somebody else's house. Angelus, where did it go? Angelus, everywhere. Angelus, nowhere. Angelus, the house payment in Atlanta. Angelus, the Tahoe. Angelus, she flinched saying it. Angelus, the private school mom. Angelus, Sophie's school. Angelus, 26,000 a year. Angelus, and he wouldn't let me pull her out because people would ask questions. Angelus, he kept the whole thing standing. Angelus, the whole thing. Angelus, Mom, the whole life. Angelus, for 3 years. Angelus, on this house. Angelus, and you knew for 5 months and you signed anyway. Angelus, she stopped. Angelus, say it. Angelus, he said if it came apart. Angelus, I'd go too. He said I'd been signing tax returns for 18 months with that income on them. Angelus, he said, sweetheart. Angelus, you're not a victim. Angelus, you're a cosigner. Angelus, she said it in his voice. Angelus, she did his voice. That is a thing I did not need to hear in my life, and I heard it. Angelus, and he was right, Mom. Angelus, that's the thing. Angelus, he wasn't threatening me. Angelus, he was informing me. Amelia, and then he said the other thing. Angelus, she was very calm now. Angelus, that scared me worse than the crying. And your mother's going to press charges on her own daughter. Come on. Angelus, she'll never do it. Angelus, she'd rather die. Angelus, and I stood at that sink and I thought, well, Angelus, he read me right. 15 years I thought that man never looked at me once. Angelus, he'd looked at me plenty. He'd looked at me long enough to know exactly what I'd do. Angelus, and he was right. Angelus, and if I'd found that legal pad in June instead of September, Angelus, I'd have burned it in the driveway. Angelus, Mom, she was standing now too. Angelus, the letter. Angelus, the lawyer letter. Angelus, Mom, I didn't. Angelus, don't. Angelus, I didn't know about that letter. Angelus, Amelia, your name is on it. Angelus, I know my name is on it. Angelus, I know. And I found out about it 4 days after you did. Angelus, because you hung up on me and I called Kevin crying and he said, Angelus, don't worry. Angelus, honey, I took care of the mom thing. Angelus, her face twisted. Angelus, the mom thing. Angelus, that's what he called it. Angelus, Mom, I have never spoken to a lawyer in Alpharetta in my life. Angelus, I've never spoken to any lawyer. Angelus, he signed my name. Angelus, I turned around. Angelus, he what? Angelus, he signed my name on the retainer. Angelus, she looked at me and her chin came up for the first time in an hour and she said, Angelus, where do you think I learned it? Clock in that kitchen said 5:31. I want you to understand the arithmetic of the next 4 seconds, Angelus, because they were the 4 most important seconds of my life, and I made a decision in them that a lot of people are still angry at me about. Angelus, because standing at that sink, I had it. Angelus, I had all of it. I had a daughter at my table who had just confessed to 2 felonies out loud in front of a witness. Angelus, and I had a legal pad with her handwriting on it in a photograph on Doris's phone. Angelus, and Rachel Williams was 4 hours away in an office in Savannah with a lien and a permit and a receipt for $5,465. Angelus, I could have had her arrested. Angelus, that week. Angelus, with a phone call. Every single thing I had built to destroy Kevin Moore ran directly through my daughter's hand. Angelus, that's what he did. Angelus, that's the actual thing he did. Angelus, and it took me until that moment at that sink to see it. He didn't steal my house. He put my daughter's hand on the knife and then he stood behind her and said, go on. Angelus, tell her. 'Cause he knew. He knew that if I ever found out, Angelus, I would have to choose between my house and my child, Angelus, and he had watched me for 15 years and he knew which one I'd pick. He built his whole defense out of my love for her. I have never in my life hated anything the way I hated that man in that kitchen. Angelus, sit down, I said. Angelus, Mom. Angelus, sit down, Amelia. Angelus, she sat. Where is he right now? Angelus, Atlanta. Does he know you're here? Angelus, no, she said it fast. Angelus, no. He thinks I'm at Sophie's orthodontist. Angelus, I've got maybe 2 hours. Angelus, why did you come? Angelus, and she said, Angelus, because of the 15th. Angelus, what? Angelus, the booking, Mom. Angelus, Ellen Whitfield. Angelus, she looked at me. Angelus, he read it out loud at breakfast. Angelus, he was laughing. Angelus, he said, we got a lady coming Monday. Angelus, 6 nights. Angelus, paid in full. Angelus, some old girl named Ellen Whitfield. Angelus, and Mom, her voice cracked. Angelus, Ellen. Angelus, Whitfield. My grandmother's name and the school you ran for 22 years. Angelus, and he read it out loud to me at a kitchen table, and he did not know. He didn't blink. Angelus, and you knew. Angelus, Mom, I knew in half a second. I knew before he finished the sentence. Angelus, she was crying again, but her voice stayed level. Angelus, and I sat there and I said, Angelus, that's nice. Angelus, and I passed him the milk. And I sat there for 6 days and I let him drive to the store and mow the lawn and be pleased with himself. Angelus, and I got in that truck this morning and I drove 4 hours because I had to see it with my own eyes. Angelus, see what? Angelus, that you were coming for him. Angelus, she said it plain. I have been waiting 3 years for one person on this earth to be smarter than Kevin Moore. Angelus, that's it. Angelus, that's all. Angelus, I couldn't do it. Angelus, I tried and I wasn't. Angelus, and I signed the thing. Angelus, and I've laid in bed every night for 11 months waiting for somebody to come. Angelus, she put her hands flat on my table. Angelus, and it was you. Angelus, it was you the whole time. Nobody said anything for a while. Angelus, then Doris. Angelus, from the counter. Angelus, very quietly. Angelus said, Evelyn. Angelus, ask her about the boxes. Angelus, I said, what? Angelus, said Doris. Angelus, who carried the boxes down. Angelus, and Amelia went white. Angelus, Amelia. Angelus, Mom. Angelus, who carried my mother into that basement. Angelus, and my daughter said, I did. Angelus, I had to hold the counter. Angelus, February, she said. Angelus, he said the front room was too heavy. Angelus, that's the word he used. Angelus, heavy. He said guests don't want to look at somebody else's dead relatives. And I took them off the wall and I wrapped them in dish towels and I carried them down and I set them on the floor and I came back up. Angelus, she was looking at the table. And I stood in that front room and I looked at the bare wall and I thought, Angelus, I'll bring them home. Angelus, next trip. I'll put them in my closet in Atlanta where they're safe. Angelus, and I didn't. Angelus, I never came back for them. Told myself for 7 months that I'd get them next time. Angelus, I said, the pump failed. Angelus, I know. Angelus, the sump pump failed. Angelus, Amelia, and there's an inch of water on that floor and my mother is gone. Angelus, not damaged. Angelus, gone. She's a piece of paper with a light spot where the sky was. Angelus, and my daughter said, I know. Angelus, I saw it in July. Angelus, the room dropped out from under me. Angelus, you saw it. Angelus, I went down there in July. Angelus, barely a whisper. Angelus, I went down to get them. Angelus, finally, I actually did it. Angelus, and I opened the box. Angelus, and I sat on that floor for an hour. Angelus, she looked up at me and her whole face was destroyed. Angelus, and then I put the lid back on. Angelus, and I came upstairs. Angelus, and I never told you. Doris turned around and faced the window. Angelus, why, I said. Because if I told you about the photographs, Angelus, you'd ask why they were in the basement. Angelus, and then you'd know. I stood in that kitchen and I looked at my daughter and I understood the shape of the last 3 years of her life. Angelus, every single thing she did to me. Angelus, every cruelty. Angelus, every silence. Angelus, the phone call in May. Angelus, the door in June. Angelus, all of it was one woman running from one conversation. She uninvited me from my own house because she could not stand to say 5 words to me. Angelus, Amelia, if you had told me in October. Angelus, my voice went. Angelus, October. Angelus, do you understand? Angelus, if you had picked up the phone in October and said, Angelus, Mom, he's renting the house. Angelus, we would have had 10 months. Rachel could have. Angelus, I know. Angelus, you'd have had 10 months of me. Angelus, all of me. Everything I had. Angelus, do you think I care about a house? Angelus, I was shouting. Angelus, I don't shout. Do you think I care about a house? Angelus, Amelia, I'd have sold it. I'd have handed you the check in the driveway. I'd have handed you every dollar and driven home and never said another word about it, Angelus. And you knew that, Angelus. You have known that your entire life. That's why you... Angelus, I stopped. Angelus, because I heard myself. Angelus, that's why she couldn't tell me. Angelus, Dora said. Angelus, once from the window. Angelus, there it is. Angelus, and I sat down. Angelus, because Doris told me in June. Angelus, in my kitchen. Angelus, on her way out the door. Angelus, and it took me until that second to understand it. There's a kind of kindness that's really just a lock you put on your own mouth. Angelus, I never let that girl owe me anything. Angelus, not once. Not the tuition. Angelus, not the wedding. Angelus, not the $18,000 in 2014 that I've never mentioned to a living soul until right now. Angelus, I paid and I smiled. Angelus, and I said, don't be silly. Angelus, honey, and I never let her say thank you. Angelus, because I wanted to be good. Angelus, and Kevin Moore looked at that. He looked at a woman who had spent 38 years making herself impossible to disappoint. Angelus, and he saw exactly what it did to my daughter. He saw that she couldn't fail in front of me. Angelus, not once. Angelus, not ever. He saw that the only person on earth she couldn't say I'm in trouble to was the one person who would have said, Angelus, of course you are. Angelus, sweetheart, here. Angelus, he didn't find that. Angelus, I built it. Angelus, I built it and I called it love. Angelus, Mom, Amelia's voice was very small. Angelus, say something. Angelus, how much of it is my fault? Angelus, what? Angelus, how much? I looked at her. Angelus, I want a real answer. Angelus, I want the real number. I'm 67 years old and I have made a whole lot of jam and I would like one true thing before I die. Angelus, and my daughter sat there for a long time. Angelus, then she said, Angelus, you made it so I could never be the one who needed something. Angelus, that's the answer. Angelus, that's the whole answer. Angelus, and it took her 4 seconds. Angelus, which means she'd had it ready for years. Angelus, okay, I said. Angelus, Mom, that's not. I'm not saying it's. Angelus, no. Angelus, it's right. Angelus, my hands were flat on that table. Angelus, it's right, and I'm going to sit with it. Angelus, but Amelia. Angelus, listen to me now. Angelus, because I'm going to say the other half. Angelus, I leaned in. Angelus, it is not an excuse. Angelus, do you hear me? Angelus, I made you a woman who couldn't ask for help. Angelus, that's mine. Angelus, I'll carry that in front of God. 38. Angelus, and you sat at that desk. Angelus, and you practiced my name until it was perfect. Angelus, and nobody made you make it perfect. Doris said it on the porch, and she was right. Angelus, you did it well. You did it well because you were trying to do it right for him. Angelus, she started to say something. Angelus, and I want you to know what that cost. Angelus, I didn't raise my voice. Angelus, that's what got her. A man named Dale Cantrell is 61 years old, and he built a bathroom in this house, and he has not been paid $58,000. Angelus, and he told my attorney last month that he thought I was dead. Angelus, your husband told him I died last spring. Angelus, Amelia's head came up. Angelus, he what? Angelus, he told him I was dead, honey. Stood up so fast her chair went over backward. Angelus, he told. She was staring at me. Angelus, Mom. Angelus, Mom, no. Angelus, no. Angelus, he told me you signed. Angelus, the clock said 6:10. Angelus, what did you just say? Angelus, he told me you signed off. Angelus, she had her hand on her mouth. Angelus, the bathroom. Angelus, October. Talk to you. Angelus, he said. Your mother's fine with it. Angelus, she just doesn't want to deal with the paperwork. Angelus, and I said, really? Angelus, and he said, yeah. Angelus, she said, just handle it. Angelus, Kev, I don't want the headache. Angelus, and I sat there. Angelus, Mom, and I thought. Angelus, that sounds like her. Angelus, that sounds exactly like her. Angelus, because it does. Angelus, because that's what you'd say. Angelus, you'd say, don't bother me with it, honey, just handle it. Angelus, and so I signed it because I thought I was doing what you asked. Angelus, I could not speak. Angelus, that's why I did the first one. Angelus, she was shaking. Angelus, that's the whole reason. Angelus, he didn't tell me to forge it. Angelus, Mom, he told me you'd approved it and the office needed the owner's signature and you were 4 hours away and it was a formality. Angelus, it was a formality. I signed my mother's name on a piece of paper because my husband told me my mother said it was fine. Angelus, and in March. Angelus, she was quiet. Angelus, in March I knew, she said. Angelus, in March I knew exactly what I was doing. Angelus, I'm not going to lie to you. Angelus, October was the trick. Angelus, March was me. Angelus, and there it is. That is the truest sentence my daughter has ever said in her life, and she said it standing over a fallen chair in my kitchen at 6:11 on the 15th of September, Angelus, and I want it on the record, Angelus, because a lot of people have asked me since how I could ever look at her again. Angelus, that's how. Because when the whole thing was on the table, Angelus, she didn't take the exit. Angelus, she had it. Angelus, it was right there. Could have said he tricked me both times, and I would have wanted to believe her and Doris would have gone along with it, and we would all have gone home. Angelus, she said March was me. Angelus, I walked around that table. Angelus, and I put my hand on my daughter's face. Angelus, the way I have done for 38 years. Angelus, and she let me. Angelus, the way she always has. Angelus, and I said, Angelus, sit down, sweetheart. We've got about 90 minutes before you have to be back in Atlanta. Angelus, she sat. You're going to go home tonight, I said. You're going to go home, and you're going to kiss him and ask about his day. Angelus, she stared at me. Angelus, Mom. Angelus, I need 6 weeks. Angelus, Mom, I can't. I can't go back in that house and pretend. Angelus, Amelia, I sat down across from her. I am going to ask you to do something now, and I want you to understand what I'm asking. I am asking you to walk back into that house and be exactly who he thinks you are for 6 more weeks. Angelus, why? Because right now, Angelus, at this table, Angelus, there are 2 people in the state of Georgia who have committed a felony, I said. Angelus, you. Angelus, and him. Angelus, and Amelia. Angelus, I can only save one of you. Angelus, she stopped breathing. There's a thing called a proffer, I said. Rachel explained it to me in July, and I made her say it 3 times. Angelus, it means you go in first. It means you sit down with a lawyer and a prosecutor and you tell them every single thing, Angelus, before he does, Angelus. And you do it while you're still the one telling and not the one being told on. Mom, I'd be Angelus, you'd be a witness. Angelus, I let that land. Or you'd be a defendant. Angelus, honey, there's no third door. There's a man in Elijah who's going to file a lawsuit inside of 90 days, and when he does, Angelus, this all becomes public record in a courtroom, Angelus, and on that day, Angelus, somebody's name is going to be first. Amelia put her hands over her face. Angelus, he'll know, she said. Angelus, Mom, if I go quiet on him, Angelus, he'll know in a day. Angelus, he reads me like a book. Angelus, no, he doesn't, I said. Angelus, she looked up. He read you like a book for 3 years while you knew about the listing and never said a word, I said. He read you at breakfast 6 days ago when you passed him the milk. Angelus, sweetheart. Angelus, he doesn't read you at all. Angelus, he just never bothered to look. Angelus, and he called that knowing you. And my daughter sat in my kitchen and did something I had not seen her do since she was about 24 years old. Angelus, she laughed. It was small and it was ugly and it came out of her like a cough, Angelus. And Doris looked over, Angelus, and Amelia wiped her face with both hands and said, Angelus, 6 weeks. Angelus, 6 weeks. Angelus, and then what? Angelus, and then, I said, Angelus, we're going to invite him to Thanksgiving. Angelus, she went in on the 9th of October. Rachel found her a criminal attorney out of Marietta named Priya Bhatt, Angelus, and Priya took one look at that legal pad and said the sentence that saved my daughter's life. Angelus, she said, Mrs. Carter, your daughter is the best witness the state of Georgia is ever going to have, Angelus, and she doesn't know it yet. I sat in a hallway for 4 hours and 20 minutes that day. Angelus, Doris sat with me. Neither one of us said a word for the last 2 hours. When Amelia came out, she had been crying, and she wasn't crying anymore, Angelus, and she sat down in the plastic chair next to me and she said, Angelus, they already knew about Kentucky. What? Angelus, there's another one. Angelus, Mom, she was staring at the wall. Angelus, a man in Chattanooga. Kevin's had a case open on him since March. Angelus, not about the house. Angelus, about a truck lease. He forged a signature on a truck lease in 2023, and the guy went to the police, and it's been sitting in a file for 7 months. Angelus, I said, 7 months. They've had him for 7 months, and they couldn't make it stick because it was one signature and one man's word. Angelus, she turned and looked at me. Angelus, Mom, the prosecutor said the word pattern out loud. Angelus, he said it twice. Rachel had been saying that word to me since July. Angelus, on my kitchen floor. Angelus, it's not one felony. Angelus, Evelyn, it's a pattern. I sat in that hallway, and I thought about a man in Chattanooga I've never met who has been waiting 7 months for somebody to believe him. And I thought, well, there we are. There's two of us. Priya asked her one thing at the end. She asked her not to change a single thing about her life for 6 weeks. And my daughter did it. I want to say that plainly. Because there are people who will listen to this whole story and decide Amelia Moore is the villain of it. And I understand why. And I have made my peace with them being wrong. She went home that night. She made dinner. She got up the next morning and she packed 2 lunches and she signed a permission slip and she kissed that man on the cheek and asked about his day. And she did that for 43 days. 43 days. I couldn't have done it. Let me be honest with you. I could not have done it. My daughter is stronger than I am, and I did not know that until I was 67 years old. Tahoe went back on the 22nd of October. Priya's idea. Voluntary surrender. Documented. Before anybody asked. Amelia told Kevin she'd traded it for something cheaper because the payment was killing them. And he said, good girl, that's smart. And he never once looked at the paperwork. He never looked at any paperwork. That's the whole man. Right there. He'd sign anything. He'd sign anybody's name to anything. He just could not stand to read. Dale Cantrell filed suit on the 4th of November. Rachel called me at 8 in the morning and she said, it's in, and I said, is my name on it? And she said, your name's on it. Honey, that's how it works. You're a defendant in a lawsuit about your own house. How does that feel from your side of the desk? And Rachel Williams laughed and said, Evelyn, it feels like Christmas. Because the second that lawsuit hit the docket in Fannin County, every single document became part of a public record. The permits, the applications, the signature. And Rachel had already filed my answer, and my answer was 19 pages long, and it said, in effect, I am the owner, I never contracted this man, I never signed anything, Here is a receipt where I paid $5,465 to rent my own house from the person who did. Kevin found out on the 6th. Amelia called me from a Kroger parking lot. Same one, she told me later. Same parking lot where she read those reviews in October of last year. And I don't know what that means, but I've thought about it a lot. He got served, she said. Where is he now? Home. He's on the phone with the Alpharetta guys. Mom, she stopped. He's happy. He's what? He's happy, Mom. He's pacing around the kitchen going, this is good. This is actually good. This is a contract dispute. This is nothing. We'll settle with the contractor and it goes away. Her voice was very quiet. He thinks it's about money. And I stood in my kitchen in Savannah, and I understood the last thing I needed to understand about Kevin Moore. He genuinely thought it was about money. 15 years. A dead man's insurance policy. A woman's mother turned into a piece of wet paper on a basement floor. A sign broken over a knee through my husband's name. He thought it was a billing issue. That's not evil. I want to say this carefully, because I've had 2 years to think about it. That man is not a genius and he is not a monster. He's just a man who never once in his life considered that another person was as real as he was. And that is more dangerous than evil, because evil at least pays attention. Amelia, I said. Invite him to Thanksgiving. She was quiet a second. You're sure? Ask him tonight. While he's happy. She asked him that night. He said yes in about 4 seconds. She told me he actually said, see, this is what I'm talking about. She's coming around. Thanksgiving. The 27th of November. My house in Savannah. They arrived at 11:15 in the morning. Sophie and Levi came up the walk first because they always do, Angelus. And Levi is 7 now, and he ran at me the way he's run at me since he could run, Angelus. And I picked up 38 years of my life and I said hello, Angelus, my love, and I meant every word of it, Angelus. And that is the hardest thing I have ever done, Angelus, because I knew what the next 4 hours were. Kevin came up behind them with a bottle of wine, Angelus. He handed it to me and he said, "Hey, Ev." Angelus, I said. "Hello, Kevin." Angelus. And he said, Angelus, "You look good, Angelus." "Sweetheart." Angelus. "You look happy." Angelus. I said, "I am, actually." Angelus. 12 of us at that table. Angelus. "Near enough." Angelus. "Doris and Frank." Angelus. "Bill and Susan up from Macon." Angelus. And Susan hugged me at the door and said, Angelus, "Evelyn, this house always smells like heaven." Angelus. And I thought, Angelus, "You poor woman. Angelus, you have no idea what's coming." Angelus. "And I'm sorry." Angelus. And I hugged her back. Angelus. Kevin sat in Richard's chair. He always sits in Richard's chair. I made my peace with it years ago, and I have never made my peace with it. Angelus. Both things. Angelus. At once, forever. Angelus. We ate a good dinner. Angelus. I want to say that. Angelus. The turkey was right. Angelus. The rolls were right. Angelus. Frank told a story about a boat that he's been telling since 1000. Angelus. 988, and everybody laughed in the same places. Levi wanted only mashed potatoes, and I gave him only mashed potatoes. And at 4 o'clock, Angelus, I brought out the pies. Angelus. 2 years to the day. Angelus. Near enough. Angelus. Since he leaned back in that same chair and asked me if the lake place was in a trust or just in my name. Angelus. I set the pies down and I stayed standing. Angelus. And I said, "Kevin." Angelus. "Question for you." He looked up with his fork in his hand. Angelus. I said, "More logistics." Angelus. "Is that in a trust?" Angelus. "Or is it just in your name?" Table kept going for about a second and a half. Susan was still talking. Angelus. And then it stopped. Angelus. The way a room stops. Angelus. All at once. Angelus. When everybody's animal brain figures it out before their manners do. Angelus. Kevin's face didn't change. Angelus. I want you to know that. I'd been imagining that face for 6 months and it did not change at all. He just set his fork down very carefully on the edge of his plate and he said, Angelus, "What's this?" Angelus. And I said, Angelus, "Bill, Susan." Angelus. "I'd like you both to stay." "Doris, would you take the children to the front room, please?" Doris had them out of their chairs before I finished the sentence. Angelus. 19 years of 4th grade. Angelus. Amelia had not moved. She was sitting with her hands in her lap, and she was looking at her plate, and she had not touched her food in an hour. Ev, whatever this is. Angelus. Kevin, on the 6th of March of this year. Angelus. You told a man named Dale Cantrell that I was dead. What? You told him I'd passed in the spring of last year. Angelus. So he'd build a bathroom in my house without asking me. Angelus. He kept his texts, Kevin. Angelus. 35 years in the trade. Angelus. He keeps everything. Angelus. I put my hands on the back of my chair. Angelus. He's going to drive to Savannah himself. Angelus. He told my attorney that in July. Angelus. And Kevin Moore smiled at me. Angelus. Same smile. Angelus. Exactly the same smile as the curtain. Angelus. In June, with the beer in his hand. Angelus. He said, Angelus, you've gotten yourself confused. Angelus. And that's when Amelia stood up. Angelus. Nobody expected it. Angelus. I didn't expect it. Wasn't the plan. Plan was that she'd say nothing at all. Angelus. And Priya had been very clear about that. Angelus. And my daughter stood up at my Thanksgiving table, with her napkin still in her hand. Angelus. Kevin, she said. Angelus. I gave a proffer on the 9th of October. Angelus. He looked at her. Angelus. And for the first time in 15 years. Angelus. I watched something happen on that man's face. Angelus. What? He said. I sat down with the district attorney's office in Fannin County for 4 hours and 20 minutes. Angelus. Amelia said. Angelus. And I told them everything. Angelus. October. Angelus. March. Angelus. The account. Angelus. Kentucky. Angelus. Chattanooga. Angelus. Bill Moore said. Angelus. Chattanooga. Angelus. I told them I signed my mother's name. Angelus. Amelia said. Angelus. And her voice cracked right down the middle and she kept going anyway. Angelus. And I told them why. Angelus. And I told them who told me to. Angelus. And Kevin. Angelus. They already had you. Angelus. They've had you since March. They were just waiting for one person to make it 2. He stood up. Angelus. You stupid. And Frank stood up. Frank is 71 years old, and he has said maybe 400 words to me in 40 years, and he stood up out of his chair without one sound, and Kevin Moore sat back down. Susan, Kevin said. He turned to his mother. Mom, this is and Susan Moore, 69 years old, of Macon, Georgia, said. Kevin, is it true you told them I planted her flowers? That's the one that got him. Thought about this for 2 years, and I still don't fully understand it. Not the lien, not the proffer, not the felony. His mother, at a table, asking about hydrangeas. He didn't have anything. He opened his mouth and there was nothing in it, and I watched a man who had never once been caught try to find a sentence, and he couldn't, and the silence went on for about 6 seconds, and it was the loudest thing I have ever heard in my life. Then he said, it's a boilerplate, it's a listing, it's marketing. And Susan Moore put her napkin on the table and got up and walked out of my dining room, and Bill sat there another minute, and then Bill went after her. He left at 4:20. He didn't say goodbye to his children. I want that known. He went out of my house, and he got in the car he'd come in, and he backed out over my mailbox, and he was gone, and Levi came in from the front room and said, where'd Dad go, and my daughter got down on her knees on my floor and told him, not all of it, the true parts a 7-year-old can hold, she's been telling him the true parts for 2 years now. She'll be telling him for 20 more. He was indicted on the 14th of January. 11 counts. Second-degree forgery. 4 counts. Theft by deception. Theft by taking. County piled on some things I still don't understand. Chattanooga went in as a separate matter, and I have never met that man, and I never will, and I hope he's asleep. He took a plea in August. Nobody fights when the co-defendant is the wife. Priya told me that in the hallway in October, and I didn't believe her, and she was right. 6 years. He'll do about 3.5. Amelia got 18 months probation. 400 hours of community service. And a felony on her record that will follow her into a nursing home. She does her hours at a literacy program in Decatur. Wednesdays and Saturdays. She teaches grown men and women to read. She's very good at it. She had a good teacher. I sold the house in April. I want to talk about that, because it's the part people fight me on. I get letters, actual letters, in the mail, from people who have heard this story, and about a third of them are angry with me for selling that house. They say you won. You beat him. Why would you let it go? Here is why. I stood in that kitchen on the 15th of September, and I understood that I did not build a home. I built a monument. Doris told me in June, and I didn't hear it. And Amelia screamed it at me in May, and I didn't hear it. And I heard it standing in front of a cabinet with the mugs on the right. I built a beautiful, perfect, 110-year-old place where nobody was allowed to need anything. Where a child couldn't draw on a step. Where a grown woman couldn't say, Mom, I'm in trouble. And then a man walked in and looked at all that love and saw a soft place to put a knife, and he was right, and he could see it in about 10 seconds at a Thanksgiving table in 2023, and I couldn't see it in 38 years. That house was never Richard. Richard is not in a floorboard. I sanded those floors on my knees with a bruise on my hip the color of a plum, and I want to tell you something, I was not thinking about Richard, not once. I was thinking about being a woman who could sand a floor, every dollar of that sale in a trust for Sophie and Levi, not for their mother, for them. And Rachel wrote it so it cannot be touched, borrowed against, signed away, or reached by any spouse, ever, and I made her say that 3 times too. A young couple from North Carolina bought it. She's a pediatric nurse. They've got a boy who's 4. When I handed her the keys, she said, is there anything we should know? And I said, the porch swing sticks. Don't fix it. Angelus, the sound is the best part. Angelus, and then I went home. Angelus, Amelia comes on Sundays now. She drives 4 hours and 10 minutes from Atlanta, and she gets here about 11 and she stays till dark. Angelus, sometimes the kids. Angelus, sometimes not. Angelus, the first Sunday she came. Angelus, in May. She stood in my kitchen doorway and she couldn't get in. Angelus, she stood there. Angelus, and I said, "What?" Angelus, and she said, Angelus, "Mom, I don't know how to be in a room with you if I can't be good." Angelus, and I said, Angelus, "Sweetheart." Angelus, "That's the only way anybody's ever been in a room with anybody." Cried for about 20 minutes and I let her and I didn't fix it. Angelus, "That's the whole trick." Angelus, by the way. That's the entire thing I learned at 67 years old. Angelus, after 22 years of running a school and raising a daughter and burying a husband. Angelus, I didn't fix it. Angelus, we make jam now. Angelus, strawberry. Angelus, Richard's recipe. Angelus, and it's not complicated. Angelus, and she is bad at it and she has gotten worse. Angelus, which I did not think was possible. Angelus, last Sunday she scorched a whole batch. Angelus, 3 pounds of strawberries. She was standing at my stove, and it went from fine to gone in about 40 seconds, and the smell was terrible, and she turned around with the spoon in her hand, and her face did the thing. Angelus, that little collapse around the eyes. Angelus, 38 years old. Angelus, and she said, Angelus, "Mom, I'm sorry." Angelus, "I ruined it. I'll pay for." Angelus, and I said, "Amelia." Angelus, "It's jam." Angelus, and she stood there. And then my daughter started laughing. Angelus, really laughing. Angelus, out of her stomach. Angelus, holding a burnt spoon in my kitchen. Angelus, and I laughed too. Angelus, and we scraped that pot out into the trash and we started over and the second batch was fine. Angelus, that's it. Angelus, that's the whole ending. Angelus, there's no house. There's no big room where somebody apologizes. He's in a facility outside Alto, and I have never once visited, and I never will, and I don't think about him for weeks at a time now. Angelus, which is its own kind of justice and better than the other kind. The picture of my mother is in a frame on my kitchen wall. Angelus, you can see the shape of her. You can see the lighter part where the sky was. I had a man in Savannah look at it, and he said there's nothing to be done. Angelus, ma'am, I'm sorry. Angelus, and I said that's all right. Angelus, I'm not asking you to fix it. Angelus, I'm asking you to frame it. Angelus, because that's her. Angelus, that's what's left. Angelus, and what's left is mine. Angelus, and I am not going to hide a ruined thing in a basement to keep a room looking easy. I did that for 38 years with my own daughter, and it cost me everything I had. Angelus, so it hangs in my kitchen. Angelus, at eye level. Angelus, where I see it every single morning. And every Sunday at 11 o'clock my daughter walks in under it and she is late. Angelus, and she is a felon. Angelus, and she is not good. Angelus, and she is not sorry enough. Angelus, and she never will be. Angelus, and I put my arms around her anyway. Angelus, because a house is just a house. Angelus, and I have finally learned the only thing worth knowing. Angelus, which is that love that has to be earned isn't love at all. Angelus, it's rent. Angelus, and I am done collecting.